How's everybody doing today?
Yeah.
You guys ready to get rolling? Got a big day. First, I want to introduce Bruce, who's, there we go. Is that, oh, okay. I'll figure that out. Bruce was kind enough to let us use this IgniteU space, so he's going to say a few words about what the heck IgniteU is, what do they do, and all that kind of jazz. Okay, so it's part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem right here in Troy. Take it away, Bruce.
How's everybody doing this morning? Everybody awake? Kind of, yeah. So nodding heads, eyes are open. That's good. All right. So I wanted to give you a little bit more orientation on downtown Troy and the building that you're in. So for how many of you is this the first time you've been in this particular building? First. So the name of this building actually is called the Quackenbush, and like 6 years ago, this was like an empty shell. So it was one of those eyesores downtown Troy, and people would wonder, what's going to happen to it. So there was a transformation in it that was driven by a vision to turn this into a place, a little mini ecosystem, if you want to use that word, for entrepreneurship and startups. So. On the bottom floor, if you have a chance, you probably will walk by it. We can take you through it a little bit today for those who are interested. Is a makerspace called the Center of Gravity. So that they were originally in a different location. They were actually in the basement of the parking lot, that multi-story parking lot across from Dinosaur Barbecue. And then they were sort of the first people to move in on the first floor. So they're, if you will, the anchor tenant. But the idea was to have the rest of the building populated eventually by early stage and startup companies. Now the smart thing that they did, the developers and the landlord, was to start recruiting those tenants that they wanted to see come into the building way before the building was done. Very often in these economic development projects, they build the building first and they say, well, then we'll figure out who's going to go in. So you end up losing a lot of time that way. But because they had already sort of put the word out and gotten people to agree to move into the building, and one of the startups I was with was one of them, so we were actually taking space on the third floor here. They already had sort of the wind at their back in terms of people knowing about the place, having a little bit of buzz about it, and so that's how very often things start to happen in the entrepreneurial sphere of things in any community. Okay, so what is IgniteU? IgniteU is actually an economic development program. It's a private, independent one. Private meaning it's privately funded. Up until this point, we haven't taken any public, state, or federal funding. The principal funder is a company called IgniteU, which is an independent consulting firm. They're a nonprofit, and this is one of the things that they do in terms of community engagement. It's not the only thing. So the original IgniteU program started with a summer accelerator. There's actually 4 alumni, it occurred to me, of IgniteU in here. Matt was one in year one. Matt was our first EIR. Clint was our second year EIR. I saw Rick Neffen here. Rick's there. Rick was one of the actual co-founders, co-conceptors of what the IgniteU concept originally started to be. So now we've expanded beyond just being a summer accelerator program. There are other activities we're involved in, which includes events on emerging tech and technology. The last one we did was on big data and atmospheric sciences. But we always change the venue. We change the subject matter, but the formula stays the same. We usually have big companies involved. In the case of the atmospheric sciences one, we had AccuWeather and IBM. As keynote speakers, and then we had startups from the local area presenting technologies related to that. So that's the whole idea, is to give visibility to startup activity in the area and expose them to the community, large companies, private industry. Okay. We're also involved in different workshops and meetups. This week we just had one that was sponsored by National Grid. And funnily enough, the topic matter was customer discovery, and it was designed to go beyond what some of the early stage programs teach. We actually have a trainer from a national organization called Sandler that many large private companies like GE employ to train their sales forces. What am I missing? Oh, last piece is commercialization, IP commercialization. So this is part of NISTEC's history. They've had a activity going back decades in terms of commercializing IP out of the Air Force Research Lab in Rome, New York, which is about 2 hours west of here. and most people, if you talk to them at the market today and you say, hey, do you know what 2 national labs are in New York State? Probably you won't meet anybody who will get the answer right. But one is Brookhaven National Lab down in Long Island, and the other is the Air Force Research Lab over at home. Okay, so there are 2 national labs actually here. All right, so if anybody has questions, last thing I will say is that we and Severino Center, RTI, are members of this innovation hotspot. There's 10 of them regionally spread throughout New York State, which support and connect entrepreneurs and startups to resources that they need. And there's some brochures here. So I'll stop at that point. And if you have any questions later on, happy to talk. Enjoy your day today.
All right, Bruce, give him a hand. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the space. So it's, you guys, you're doing your startup companies and things like that. It really takes a whole ecosystem, because you don't have enough resources within your own company to make everything happen. So people like Bruce, the ecosystem here downstairs with the center of gravity, just lots of stuff in the region you can draw from to do things. I think Hillary Clinton said it best. It takes a village, right? I think she said that. And that makes you guys the village people, by the way. So, it's early. It's early for Clint jokes. But I would like to introduce my co-host for today, Matt Cusack, ladies and gentlemen. So Matt, why don't you say a few words about who you are, what you do, all that kind of stuff.
I'm glad to be here. I think most of you know me. I started doing startups probably 30 years ago. And for the last 5 years, I've been teaching entrepreneurship with my good friend Clint. Kelly and I were colleagues for a few years when we were growing the Severino Center in Entrepreneurship at RPI. I was an entrepreneur in residence there. One of the original founders of IgniteU with Rick and Bruce and a few others. There's probably 5 of us. And then I've been teaching with Clint for the last 2 or 3 years. Co-ran the Albany Med Back Academy, and I see some alumni in here for that. That's great to see. I don't know if there's anything else to say, but just doing whatever I can to help folks like you, because I was in your shoes. Actually, we were in your shoes many, many years ago.
Oh yeah.
He's older than me, so his was a long time ago.
Yeah, my shoes are worn out.
Clint's still in those shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I pivoted my shoes off.
So, can I ask questions to them?
Oh, sure.
So, if I can go around, since I knew, fill me in on what you're doing. I'll start over here.
Actually, you know what, Matt? They're gonna pitch their
they
stuff.
are?
In
Oh, I forgot about
about
that.
2 minutes. Yeah.
2 minutes.
So yeah, we can.
I'll
do
sit
that.
down and listen.
Let me. All right. So I'll get through sort of the oversight things, and then we'll get them cranking. Okay. All right, guys. So today we're gonna report out on your homework, because we gave them some homework last night, Matt. It was tough. They stayed there till a little after 8, and then they had to go home and do homework. How about that? But I told them it's the National Science Foundation. It's making us do this. So anyway, they're going to report out on that. We're going to talk a lot about value proposition. Where do you fit in the value chain? Where do your products fit in? We're going to do a little value proposition breakout, report out about the breakout, talk about readiness level, wrap up, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to go talk to, go over to farmers market. I want to give you guys some tips and stuff like that on how to go there and go talk to some people, okay? Okay, report out. Does everybody loaded their stuff up, right? All right, so I'm going to go cancel out of this, get onto Google Drive, and we're going to go around the room and do it. And I got somebody's thumb drive, so I'll do that. I'll do that fast. Okay, any questions so far? Good? Sorry about the clunkiness of this, but you know, it is what it is. All right, in your team folders, is that where you have your presentations? Okay. Who wants to?
I don't know.
You want to go first?
No, I messed up the assignment, so I thought we were actually talking, so I wrote a Word document, like a page and a half Word document.
Oh.
So I'm just ready to put PowerPoint.
I mean, it doesn't matter what format.
Okay.
So, all right, who wants to go first? Any volunteers? Get up, come on down. All right. 5 minutes. We don't have the timer today. Oh, okay. On there. I'll do yours last. Yeah, okay. Is that cool? Oh, we do have a timer. Look at that. All right. Okay. And there's even quicker. There you go. All right, 5 minutes, okay? We gotta keep things rolling.
So, hi again. Good morning. Hope you guys are awake. So, we are Quiggle once again. Nice to see you guys here. So, we talked a little bit yesterday about the product and gave you the basic understanding of what we are doing here, right? So, today is kind of an expansion on that, right? So, what are we doing here? Once again, we are basically making it very easy for people to connect and instantly exchange information. We cannot live in a world where we are connecting by typing in names. We cannot live in a world where we are exchanging paper business cards and we go home with like 500 business cards, right? That's not the world. We are we're doing all kinds of futuristic things. Just connecting has got to be a lot easier than what we have right now. And what we are trying to do basically is kind of plug that big customer need, if you will. Now, at first glance, this looks like a very simple thing, right? But the fact that, we are enabling connectivity between two people actually opens up a whole world. What are some of the things that you can do? To begin with, you can network much more effectively. The fact that you can connect, right? You can make a lot more connections. You can, even when you're networking, your networking interaction is a lot more meaningful because in one instant you've connected, now we can talk about other things. Right? And the fact that you've connected means you can extend your networking experience the next day or days after that much more meaningfully. You can follow up easily. You can get in touch with that person easily. For instance, I connected with Lucien yesterday, and immediately after that, we could actually continue the conversation. Right? So you network much more effectively because you're able to connect, make more connections, and follow up on those connections. Because you have it all digitized. You can exchange things much more easily, right? Like, you want my resume? Here it is. Instantly. It's like you're able to pass on a paper document with the same convenience you can pass on a digital document. You can capture information much more quickly at point of contact. What does that mean? If you're a food truck, right, selling hot dogs in downtown Troy, and people are coming and buying. How do you capture that customer information? It's extremely difficult, right? All you need to do now with Quiggle is as they're passing by, simply sort of scan them. So just the fact that you can instantly capture information and establish contact with people lets you do a whole world of things. So this is more than simply a contact sharing app. Right? It is basically something that enables all these things which can potentially have wide-ranging impact. That's essentially what we're trying to get at here. So I mean, I don't know how I'm doing on time. So just to give you an idea, right? So if I put up my QR like this, let's say you go to your favorite band's summer concert. At the end of it all, they put up their QR like this through Quiggle. And all of us just go like this and scan, right? I just scan this. And now I get my favorite band's forthcoming album, I get a free song. Bam. Think of this where this is on a large screen, right? And 5,000 people are holding up their phones and scanning this QR through Quiggle, and they get that file. That's the kind of connectivity we are kind of enabling here. Right? So all this is great. What we are faced with right now is the real problem of how to gain traction and growth, like Clint was saying yesterday. There is this big potential, but how do we get there with concrete traction? So market feedback so far has suggested the following things. We have created the basic platform to instantly connect, right? What do we do with this? So market feedback has suggested a few things to us. First thing is to organize contacts into folders and groups. For instance, today I walk around and network with all of you, capture your information. I store it into a folder called, Eyesight 2018, right? Immediately I have that list, right? Which is a list of folders, a list of contacts, which I'm going to have for the rest of my life, by the way, right? Because it's all backed up and it's all digital, okay? So market feedback has suggested that. Market feedback has also suggested in-app messaging, right? 5 minutes?
That's it.
Whoa! Thank you.
All right. Okay, any other volunteers that want to go up? Right. Oh, right there. Yep. And we have this one. This one. Slides. And there's a clicker too. Hey, Sean, do you have the clicker? Oh, sorry. Yeah, you just steer it. Wow. Okay, there you go. 5 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. We are representing Cybus, a smart breast pump. What problems are we solving? The ability to pump an optimal amount of milk for your newborn. Hands-free method where you can multitask and avoid any kind of pain while you're holding those bottles or devices, wires, whatever it is. It takes a toll on you. No setup or cleaning up to do. It usually takes at least on a minimum 20 to 30 minutes to set up and clean everything afterwards. It's a 30-minute process. So you're saving time right there. No private rooms needed to pump. So you don't need, if you're working, you don't need to go to a separate nursing room to actually go pump. You can do it right there at your desk while working. No lost time at work. So you're not devoting 30 to 45 minutes going to a private place to pump. You can just do it right there at your desk. Who are our customers? Working mothers, right, with newborns who are willing and able to breastfeed, hospitals in the capital region, and insurance companies. How large is our market opportunity? So as more women advance into the workplace, we have higher need of a breast pump. Top assumptions. One, we are assuming that there's breastfeeding awareness, right? We are assuming that women know about the health benefits, especially when women have multiple children. They understand that sometimes experience varies and sometimes it doesn't work for one child and it does work for another child. So we need to make sure the women are aware. So we are kind of relying on those networking or focus groups that they're doing a good job about promoting awareness about breastfeeding and its health benefits. And also that we have the technology to promote this kind of a device. Short maternity leaves. A lot of companies, especially if you are in a private world, your maternity leave is always said 6 to 8 weeks depending on how things go, or 10 to 12 weeks. So you can really see, and obviously certain amount is paid and certain amount is not paid. So women are usually kind of forced to go back to work sooner than later. Who are we going to ask these questions? And which specific questions are we going to focus on? We need to make sure women are aware of the health benefits of breastfeeding. If they plan to continue to work long time or in the long term while they have that newborn. how long of maternity leave they need. Everybody have a different preference. Some people are good with 4 weeks, some people are good with 4 months. Everybody has a different opinion. And what's your opinion about breastfeeding? Like Clint was mentioning yesterday, some people are very religious. They're like, I'm going to stay home 6 months with my baby and I'm going to breastfeed or do a year thing. I think right now regulations say you should at least breastfeed your child for 6 months. If you can do more, a year is recommended for good immunity and good foundation and a good gut system. Who are we asking? Women that have children, who are pregnant, or who have family members who are pregnant or conceiving or trying to conceive. What we are trying to focus here are particularly women with newborns who want an easy and beneficial way to go on with their lives. Because especially nowadays we have technology to make everything easier. Now we're going into robots and everything else. So why not a breast pump that actually works with you and adapts with you in your lifestyle? So you don't have to sit somewhere for 30 to 45 minutes and putting your rest of your life on hold, especially if you have other toddlers running around in the house. We're trying to make that easier. That's that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, when we go to the farmer's market, many of you guys won't really find any target customers, but in your case you might, and quickly you guys might find some target customers too. So when we're actually over there, we can do little game day coaching and get you guys to go talk to some of the targets. So if you guys see a pregnant lady walking around, we could give you some tips on how to go talk to her and stuff like that. Okay? Yeah.
I'm up.
You want to go up? All right. Get up here, you. Which one? This one?
Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Colin Dandy again, representing Stority, where we are democratizing energy production by turning solar customers into energy providers. So just to give you a brief overview of the problem again, a lot of consumers, either small businesses, multifamily homes, want to make the decision to purchase solar panels. They want to make an impactful, positive, eco-friendly decision. However, with the current power purchase agreements and loans, the economics of their purchase isn't really economically advantageous for the consumer, and actually is more so for the installer or the utility or grid company. And so as they get reimbursed through various credits and net metering policies, as the energy prices change over the day, demand increases, it goes up, it goes down. Consumers really can't take advantage of this option, which leaves them with a large contract for a piece of equipment that they can't realize the returns that they should be doing. And so looking at our total customer segment, there's about 50,000 solar installations in New York and California. Just looking at a serviceable market of the capital region and my hometown, there's about 5,000. Looking at actual estimations of customers who own or are about to own the panels and the equipment and have the decision-making ability for future gains, we're looking at about 1,000, and then I'm looking to have an initial target size of about 500 customers in this market. So what is the customer I'm really looking at? They have
or about to own solar panels. They've looked into battery storage methods. They're unsatisfied with their energy credits that they're getting, and they're interested in contributing to the overall renewable energy environment and ecosystem. The residential solar market is growing at a pretty fast rate. There's about 150,000 installations across the country already. And then the market that I'm sort of in is the energy management market, which is already at about $1.5 billion of economic activity. And so there are several assumptions that I'm making that will really be key to my business's success. One is that it's compatible under VEDR and current and upcoming energy policy and legislation, that there's enough available infrastructure and equipment already installed around the country in my target market segment, and I'm able to gather the data and information from these equipment. And that I also have a competitive value proposition. The market is very saturated with a lot of companies trying to capitalize on the solar industry, and so I have to really make sure that I stand out in at least one way, and that the market rates for the current rebates are unattractive for homeowners. And so what I'll do is I'll be asking questions to politicians, if I get the chance to, of how my platform fits in with their current strategic goals. I'll be asking the equipment manufacturers about developing partnerships, if there's any open source or API available, trying to see how much sales they've done in that area. I'll be asking competitors what they're offering and try to carve out my own niche. And I'll be asking customers if they're really unsatisfied and want to gain more from their equipment. So I'll be talking to homeowners, equipment manufacturers, installers, integrated software companies, the grid, and potentially politicians. Here are some that I've already identified. Here's my service comparison. Yep.
Keep those target the questions as open-ended as possible, but try to learn something from it that validates your value proposition. All right.
Let's practice.
Where's Praxis? There it is. The second one.
Oh yeah.
Slides. Okay, take it away.
Morning, everyone. Just a reminder, we're Practice Biotechnology, and what we do is science for your skin. I'm Alex Adam, and my business partner is Ted Gladys, an oculoplastic surgeon in the area. And our first product is a cream to treat a chronic skin disease that is called rosacea. And I could bore you for hours about the clinical details and academic details of rosacea, but it's too early for that, so I'm going to start with the program with a very simple slide. And these are four quotes that are unsolicited quotes at Ted's office. These are actual patients from Ted's office, and while talking about the problems, that's the kind of things that they say. They feel that even though they're treating for the rosacea, they still look and feel awful. Remember, this is a skin disease. It affects mainly the face. It can also affect the eyelids, bringing problems to the eyes. So they feel awful. They're embarrassed. They're anxious. They're somewhat depressed, and they lose productivity. It's a really big problem. They lose their self-confidence because of this problem. And sometimes they have problems with their eyes because it affects the eyelids, so that brings problems to the cornea and can really affect the eyes. So we have a really big problem here. If you remember from yesterday, 16 million Americans suffering from rosacea, and that's probably an underestimate. And medications don't do anything. or for at least for many patients, those medications don't do anything. So we've got a problem, and we have our solution with a better treatment. So what we think are going to be our customers. We separated customers between our patients, which will be the end users, and the physicians that will prescribe this medicine. But we can put them together because those patients will seek those physicians. So first, who's going to be our early adopters? Who's going to be the first ones that we should market this strategy? And we believe this is going to be about 1% of the market, or 160,000 to 200,000 patients. Who are those? Those are patients that are already highly engaged trying to find a better cure, that tried everything else that is on the market and they don't respond to it. They still have rosacea and they can prevent it, and they are actively looking for a better solution. And in fact, some of them already contacted us, even when we didn't really start any testing. And we're going to reach those patients at the doctor's offices, dermatologists, of course, and ophthalmologists, because when it affects the eyes, they go to the ophthalmologist, not the dermatologist. And we'll reach them through scientific publications and medical conferences, and by partnering with the National Rosacea Society, which does a lot of outreach for both patients and physicians on this field. Once we have a proven track record on these patients, we'll target our majority group. This is about 8 million patients. These are patients that may not be completely satisfied with current options, but probably are not ready to try a new medication just yet, but still may be looking for less expensive treatment. Some of the treatments out there right now may be up to $1,000 a month. And we also identified another half of this customer base, which we call the laggards, that are people that may not be seeking treatment at all. They've been already disappointed by so many treatments, they're not even trying anymore. Or they have a very mild form of rosacea and they're not even aware that they could do something about it. All right, so one of the questions for today was, what are the things we think are true? What are our hypotheses that we could test? First is that there are patients out there with unmet needs, and we already know that. It's well described on clinical publications that these patients, there are a lot of patients that don't have a treatment that works for them. So that those patients are actively looking for better treatment, and although our data on that it's much smaller, we've been approached by many, and every time I talk to somebody with rosacea, they immediately tell me, oh, please let me know what you're doing because I want to try. So I really think we know that these patients are actively looking for something better. And this is a chronic disease. So we're thinking we're going to give the cream for years to these patients. So are these patients willing to use this cream for many, many years? That is something we still don't know. So some of the questions that I need to know for these patients is, since when they have rosacea and how long do they treat it for, how severe do they think it is, do they really need the treatment or not? Are they compliant with the treatments? Are they willing to do this treatment for a long time? How often are they willing to use this treatment? Are they willing to use it every day, twice a day, every week? And it doesn't matter whether it needs to be covered by health insurance or not. So those are some of the questions we need to start talking to the patients. And that, I think, is the last one. And
Right. Now, some of these questions, I mean, it'd be better to ask more open-ended questions because, like, you know, how severe do you think it is? Oh, pretty bad. You know, you might get that answer, you know.
Right.
How often do you use it? Once a week. It's like, so you try to get them more into a conversation. But yeah, these,
right, but those are
you want,
you
want answers to these.
Right,
But yeah,
exactly.
okay, good. I want to turn it over to Matt. He's got a few words.
Okay. So I got a quick assignment. Does everybody have a piece of paper and something to write with? All right. I want you to write down for me at least one key takeaway from yesterday. If you can get to 3 from last night, write down one key takeaway from yesterday. And if you can get to 3, that's great.
How about you guys signed up for this much homework? Yeah. I
Sure.
know.
Tom, this is your second class with me. You don't have any excuse.
Smart ass in the other class.
What you mean now?
I just want to minimize this. That's it. Okay. So now here's your next assignment. Is everybody finished or do you need more time? Were you debating which one was the best key takeaway and stuff like that in your head? All right, great. So now, I want you to write down 2 things. First, how many presentations did you just see? Write down a number.
This morning?
Just now. Yep. Now I want you to write down, if you have the number, write down what you remember about each one of them. Just something, real quick, write it down. Sorry, Richard, walking all over the place. I taught a class on the 5th floor at Adler once, and the kids came in before the class and put chairs around me, so I couldn't walk around
Couldn't walk around.
and check them on their homework.
Yeah, that's rough.
When I walked into the room, I had space. Correct.
Terrible.
All right. So now here's my question. What was easier to recall? What you took away last night? Or what I just asked you this morning?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Why do you think that was? You had time to think about it overnight?
Bad, like a rush to kind of get your presentation out and on that. Like now, like even today, you can tell the quality of the presentations were lower because we had less time to prepare.
Uh-huh. Good.
The same lessons got hammered in over and over again.
Last night.
Yeah.
Good.
Long-term memory is fundamentally different than short-term.
Long-term is, but it takes effort to get something to switch from short to long-term, right? So here's something interesting. Short-term memory you can hold, does anybody know how much you can hold in short-term memory easy? The average adult? 7 things. Tops. 7 things. How many of you have more than 7 things in your presentation? Show of hands. Everybody hand in the room. Right? So I'm going to give you an example. When you pitch, and this, I'm not picking on, how many teams went this morning, by the way? 4. How many of you could remember something about all 4 teams? Show of hands. How many of you struggled with like, oh, what was that solar team? Or what? Did anybody have that happen? Okay. So why do you think that happened?
This was a lot of info.
There's a lot of what?
A lot of info, and you don't know if it's important.
Correct. So how do you think you get somebody to retain, even just 20 minutes later, what you stayed up till probably midnight working on? How do you get them to retain that?
Really break it down.
Really break it down?
Having something catchy is very helpful. Maybe you talk about the democratization of energy. I've never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Being able to associate with something that you think that they already know and are familiar with.
Yes.
Okay, this is a key element of it. If you can associate in your mind. Rick, how do you get somebody to associate with something? Do you remember this from suffering through class with me?
Relate with them somehow.
You gotta relate with them. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an example right now. We're gonna get back to the presentations. And I expect everybody that comes up after me, you're gonna change on the spot. Okay? So here's the way it goes. Do you know what storytelling is?
Yeah.
Yes? Do you remember a good story, like a good joke when somebody tells you something funny?
Yeah.
Yes. Start out every presentation from this moment forward with a good story. So I'm going to pick on one of the teams. Do you know one of the teams is doing cryptocurrency? Yes?
Yes.
So here's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to tell you a story. On Tuesday morning, something really significant happened. We got some smart people in the room. $1 trillion is what? 10 to the what?
Well,
10 to the $12. Is it 12 or 9?
12.
12. We're in agreement now? Okay, I hear 9s. Okay, it's 10 to the 12. Is that a big number? So on Tuesday, the market forecast for cryptocurrency was $1 trillion before the end of this year. Regardless of the fact that both Korea and India announced restrictions on trading them, and 3 countries in the EU this week announced they might restrict it. $1 trillion. Who's making all that money? Who is owning all that money? Is it people in this room? Anybody here own cryptocurrency? A few of you? But not everybody. Would you like to own a piece of that cryptocurrency? Yes or no? Yeah. So our startup is about how to get you into that market. Are you going to remember that story? Yeah. That's the way I want you to start. Don't give me statistics. Tell me a story. Then an hour later, I'm going to remember it. Is this helpful? Yes? No? Am I wasting time? Okay, good. Who's next?
Good stuff, man.
Thanks.
See, you guys are in the valley of suck. Just proves it right there. All right, who wants to go next? Anybody?
I'll go next.
Come on, crypto.
Since I just did the introduction.
Yeah, you just did the introduction. So we're gonna make it so easy for you guys that Grandma and Grandpa are gonna buy Bitcoin. With our marketplace here. You think we're kidding, but we're not. So remember that.
I like that. Here's this.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty big one. I don't know, for whatever reason it was like 50 megabytes or whatever. The presentation itself, I think it was a background we used.
It's coming, it's coming.
All right, cryptocurrency marketplace. So, what are the problems that? Oh wait, this is the wrong one. This is the earlier one.
Oh, this one. Wait, this one?
Yeah, sorry, let's see.
You think that's it?
No, it's the other. It's the first one.
First one?
Yeah, it should be that.
thinking.
I know. There we go.
Okay. Where is it? There we go.
All right. So, what are the problems we're trying to solve? Well, many of you here may not be involved in cryptocurrency, but I'm sure many of you have had problems like, oh, I have to go to the exchange and I have to, buy my currency. I got to do the wire transfers, whatever. Our story is about making it easy for you to do that without even thinking about it. The same way you go on iTunes and buy some music, we want to make it that easy where you go and you're able to get your cryptocurrency when you want it. To be able to find, using information, the best exchange to buy your coin from, and to make sure that you can take advantage of market opportunities out there that you may not even know. So these are the problems we're trying to solve. And as I mentioned before, who are the customers? We're at an early point where we really don't know where we want to go yet. So it could literally just be helping grandma or grandpa through the exchange, but we could also look and work with different traders like passive or active traders. Passive traders may not be doing anything with their coin, and so we could help take advantage of arbitrage opportunities. Active traders may want data, so you may want to know more about, gee, what's the best time to buy certain coins? And that's what we're going to help you out with. Or people who are like, I want to get involved because I don't want to miss out. These are some of the people, and maybe it's part of your story, that we want to help out. So how large is our opportunity? It's in the trillions. And just alone in commission, which is 0.1%, there's $3 billion for one currency, which is about 35% of the market share. So if you kind of take that into consideration, it's about $10 billion. So commissions alone are $10 billion. So if we take a portion of that, we have a great market. And what are some assumptions? Well, assumption one is people actually pay for information. I thought it was obvious, but then I thought, well, maybe it's not. Maybe people don't want information. There's also the point too where, is there actually a price difference between exchanges? Because if you don't have that, then there's really no point in trading for Bitcoin on one for the other if it's just going to cost you more because of commission. So that's an assumption. We're also assuming, this was a number we got, that there are actually millions of users out there who are currently and actively trading. So these are people who might be interested in using our particular platform. So these are just a few assumptions that we had out there. What are some questions we want to ask? Well, very simple. Hey, are you into Bitcoin? Or oh, if you are into Bitcoin, have you had problems with the exchange? Like, I know I have. Do you buy or sell, or do you use it in your own business? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different questions we can ask out there, mainly dealing with the experience of buying. And I feel as though that when you go out there and you try to find the best opportunities, that it's just very difficult to do that. So we want to ask questions related to the experience of buying the coin. And who will you ask? Again, this is kind of going back to the previous point where we're really going to ask everybody, but there's there's four main categories now, but so people who have trouble with technology. So, for example, I mentioned before the grandma and grandpa situation where, hey, I want to buy it because I've heard of it, but I don't know how to do that because I can barely turn on my computer. So maybe these are people we can help out. Passive traders that are not taking advantage of their opportunities. These are people who may just say, hey, here's my coin, or do something with it for us. Or active traders who say, hey, give me the information so I can make the decision for myself. And just maybe even potentially buyers of businesses. So, hey, I use cryptocurrency in my business, or I want to incorporate that, know nothing about it. Maybe we can help those people out. And that's about it.
All right. Which one are you? Oh, this one. Okay. And is this one? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. In the spirit of actually listening to what we're being told here, I'm going to start with a small story. In the spring of my 8th year, my father went to the hospital with a back pain, and the thought at the time was that he had a bulged disc. It was probably within a few weeks that we found out that he had terminal cancer. It was metastasized throughout his body, like throughout all the bones, so there was pretty much no chance at that point. By fall of that year, he had passed. It's not the happiest story, but it is a relevant story to our technology. So the company is SXRNA Technologies. We're actually trying to create a point-of-care diagnostic for cancer detection, specifically for those patients who have had cancer, gone into remission, and are living with this constant threat of a recurrence. The issue with that is, based on the cost of current techniques for actually monitoring that, the ability to monitor based on frequency is fairly restricted. So the farther out you go, just based on the statistics of likelihood of recurrence, that gap in frequency widens to the point that if you're not going to experience a recurrence, that's fine. If you do, it could be quite a bit of time before it's actually detected. So our customers are not those end user cancer patients. Our customers are potentially going to be the existing diagnostic companies that make similar sorts of tests. And while the insurance companies and clinicians may not actually be direct customers, their buying is probably going to be necessary to convince the diagnostic companies that what we're trying to pitch to them is worth incorporating into their business model. Regarding market opportunity, it's not completely clear yet. As we said, the numbers and statistics regarding cancer patients account for the number of end users that are potentially out there. But it doesn't really tell us as much about the market segment that we're looking at as looking at what the current costs and expenditures are. So in 2016, I think the average number for point of care tests was about 18 billion. I don't know if you can see, I'm not actually sure where the laser pointer here is. Oh, there it is. Okay. This bar chart, this highest bar is actually for glucose monitoring. The one all the way over to the right, the smallest, is actually for tumor marker monitoring. That's in point of care. So out of $18 billion in 2016, maybe $250 million in point of care was in tumor marker detection. In 2021 to 2025 time range, it's expected that the point of care diagnostics field in general will be around $40 billion. Almost an order of magnitude higher is just cancer detection in general. Now the overlap for that isn't really well defined because, again, as we saw in 2016, there's a very small amount of point of care cancer testing in existence at this point. So we're assuming that we're going to be somewhere in this overlap that isn't really well defined yet. And we're going to work on clarifying that. So the top assumptions that we're making, one is that the point of care test will be cost effective versus laboratory techniques. The insurance companies will see a positive cost benefit in terms of actually having early detection. And that may depend also on the type of cancer we're talking about. If it's not treatable, or at least not curable, earlier detection from a purely business standpoint may just mean more expenditure in terms of treatment. And it's the sad fact that while we may want to save the world, we're dealing with companies that have a bottom line involved. The other assumptions, one is sensitivity levels. Is the false positive, false negative rate going to be amenable to actual market adoption? And whether or not cancer detection is actually the best initial application for a technology. Obviously, a lot of us have personal stories that involve cancer and would like to see something like this hit the market, but if we can't actually commercialize it, it doesn't do anybody any good anyway. So questions and people to talk to. Obviously, the diagnostic manufacturers who we think may be our most likely first or only customers for adopting the technology. also in the spirit of what we've been told, rather than trying to make a sales pitch to them, it's going to be more about asking questions and finding out circuitously what they're interested in. So what improvements do you think are coming in cancer monitoring? What would you like to see? Insurance case managers, what are the current costs associated with cancer patient post-remission care? And in terms of clinicians, what outcome changes could be expected with early detection? And use that information.
Anybody else have a licensing play? So you guys are going to license your technology, not sell the end products. I think you guys were too. Anybody else? You guys thinking about that? So one of the things that I've noticed is if you're going to do a licensing thing, I've learned this with Samsung, a biotech company that we worked with before, they want you to reduce all the risk. For them to really be interested in licensing your stuff, you can't just get it to a prototype. They want to see that you actually have traction and stuff like that sometimes. So sometimes you got to walk through the whole valley of suck and actually get to launch. And then they say, I'll scoop. That's what happened with me with Samsung, like I said. We had manufacturing in China. They knew we could hit specs for color and things like that. We could scale it, all this kind of thing. Then they wanted to license it. So just be aware of that. So you may be able to license it in advance of launching a product. You might not get as much money as if you go all the way. That kind of thing. Just food for thought. Okay, anybody want to volunteer? There we go. Do the arm wrestle.
Bruno. All right.
Right there. Which one? Second one?
17, yeah.
Oh, here's this.
So if you guys remember from yesterday, we're Hala Simple Technology. My name's Erica, this is Mindy. Our other teammates couldn't be here today. But how many of you watch crime shows? CSI, Law and Order, Chicago Police. How many of you realize that our TV show, they get their sample run, they get the profile, they go and find their suspect all in 1 hour? How many of you guys think that that's actually what happens? Okay, so a few, okay. What actually happens is that sample that they run can take 2 hours just to get a profile. And the DNA, once the profile is built, the time to find that person can take days, weeks, months. So what we aim to do in our lab, we focus on forensic research that can hopefully help people like police narrow down who they're looking for faster. So that while those tests are running for 2 hours, they have actually something to go on rather than just sitting there waiting. So we look for portable methods, things that they can do right on site. They don't need to send their evidence anywhere. And a lot of it's non-invasive. So when they have a profile sample, they don't have to go searching for somebody and stick a cotton swab in their mouth or prick them with a needle or any of that. So we have two markets, essentially the forensic side and then the public side. Our technology can do both. For forensics, the current processes are extensive and cost a lot of money. Like I said, 2 hours, 75 minutes. Skilled people are needed to analyze the evidence and generate the data. There are instruments that are portable and on site, but they generate so much data that the technician using them on scene can't interpret it. Some evidence is wasted. If you think about forensics, your first thought is probably blood, fingerprints. There's a lot of other things that are at that crime scene that could be tested. And like I said, many of these processes are invasive if they need a comparison sample, so blood draws, and cotton swabs. For the public, how many of you actually take the time to assess how drunk you are after you've had a few? How do you assess that? Do you just say, I think it's been long enough, or I've had enough water? Probably. So our technology has a way that you can actually concretely determine whether or not you are able to go home and drive. Breathalyzers are, for the police anyway, they have to be calibrated frequently, otherwise they will give you a false positive. For the ones that you can buy on Amazon or at Walmart, they can be kind of expensive for what they are. And they're kind of, if somebody sees that on their keychain, they're gonna be like, huh, that's interesting. Why do they need that? Our technology doesn't, you can put it in your pocket and nobody would ever see it. Bars, if they overserve you, you're liable, or they're liable. even if they cut you off. Our market, like I said, forensics in the public. Our science can do a characteristic of a person, a variety of ways. We could eventually have a database for these markers with their corresponding levels so that no guessing is needed. Our market, we don't have specific numbers at the moment, but basically we go from kind of, I guess, the United States and filter it down to regional and local, starting with our local police officers and UAlbany students, and our local crime scene officials. Our assumptions for forensic side is that they need to find out information about their suspect fast. We kind of know that already, but at the same time, what is their definition of fast? Mine is in 5 minutes, theirs might be, okay, 2 hours is fine. They want on-site analyses so that they don't need to send evidence to the lab. Maybe they prefer that because then there's no questions, no guessing games. They want to get the most out of their crime scene. Maybe they're fine with the evidence that they're collecting now. And something accurate and reliable that may not give as many false positives as the tests that they're currently doing. For the people, we're assuming that they want to know if they've had too much to drink. They want something cheap and reliable, especially if it's college students that want this technology. And that bars, liquor stores, alcohol companies, that they are interested in maybe providing this with their product or at their local bar. Some of our questions for the forensic side would be, what's the most popular product that they use for on-site testing now, and where do they get it from? There are so many chemical companies that they could buy this from. We'd be curious to see where they're getting it from. What evidence are they actually looking for, besides what we typically think of? Maybe we're missing something that we could actually test ourselves. How do they collect it and test it? Do they have to send everything to the lab, or can they actually do a lot of it on-site? And if they do collect everything, do they actually test it all? Why or why not? For the public, more or less, how often do you drink and how much do you drink in a small window of time? How long do you wait before deciding you can drive? And how have you decided that you've waited long enough? If they don't care to check that, then obviously there's no use for our product. But we believe it'd be beneficial to actually give them an answer. And they can always, for the public, insurance companies could actually use this to validate that their customer was actually, or their customer was actually not drinking if a police did pull them over. So that's what we have.
A lot of times if there's a competitor out there doing something similar, if you could go talk to them somehow in an open place, again, use your NSF hat or something like that, that would be, you could get a lot of information about things. Who wants to go next? Come on down. So you guys are what background? This one? Maybe this one? This one?
Hi, good morning. We're a live drug biopsy team, and so curing cancer is everybody's dream, right? And still nowadays, 1 in 6, nearly 1 in 6 death is caused by cancer. So we asked exactly the same question again and again. So why is it so hard to treat? And what's the reason? So one of the biggest obstacles for that is cancerous cells from one patient, they respond to different drugs differently. So our product is designed to just detect this difference between the cells in one patient and hopefully provide much more precise information of the patient so that like doctors or hospitals will make a better personalized treatment strategy for that individual patient. So who are our customers? Our customers can be independent PIs from universities and also cancer biologists from industry like biotech companies or pharma companies, and doctors or oncologists who actually treat cancer actually treat cancer or determine the stage of the cancer patients. And of course, insurance companies who's willing to fund this technology or not. So we did some preliminary research, and our target market is global oncology and cancer drugs, which expected to grow to 112 billion in 2020. So our top assumptions is here. First, the top assumption is cancer patients really they want this personalized cancer treatments, and they believe in that compared to current treatments. And of course, oncologists scientifically they believe this is the much more effective way to treat cancer. And also the pharma industry who wants to test their drugs, they're interested in test their drugs on this platform before clinical trial. And researchers from universities and national labs, they need a better platform to understand cancer and to understand this variation in cancer cells. So the question we want to ask is whether people do believe in this treatment, do believe in this new term personalized treatment compared to our traditional treatments. And we also want to ask some expertise in different areas about how they treat or how their opinion on this variation in cancer treatment, and if that's gonna make a difference if they approach it in this way. Of course, we want to also ask insurance companies if they eventually cover this. We're going to ask general public, ask everyone if they believe in this treatment again. Second, we try to approach the doctors and oncologists in medical centers and pharma industry, drug companies who plan to develop treatment, and we can even ask whether they want to take this platform or this technology as the service combining their new drugs. So definitely labs, cancer labs, such as Foundation Medicine, which is an organization we found, and also insurance companies. Yeah, this is our marketplace.
Right. So just so I'm clear, you guys are you're making a tool, aren't you? You're making like I call it a petri dish, like a fancy petri dish to grow cells, right?
Yeah.
So can it be useful for more than just cancer, or just?
Actually, it can be used for studying all the cell types.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're able to actually put the cells into specific spots, so it can also find potential usage in future engineering. So grow cells into specific
So
drugs.
you guys, like I said, we all have the luxury of just starting customer discovery now. So I would cast the widest net possible. To see if there's anything else out there that might even, maybe it's a faster mover, fewer restrictions, from the government or something like that. Then you can get the revenue faster. So, all right. Come on up. Which one? Oh, yeah. Which one? This one?
Just gonna take it.
That works. Yeah, there you go. Let's see.
All right, how many of you have been to a county fair over the summer? Love them. How many of you milked a cow there?
No one? I used to do it every summer. Okay, that one's bad. Anyway, so I used to do it every summer. I used to line up a whole bunch of kids, freshly coated in like whatever elephant ear on their fingers. So they would go milk the cow, and who knows how many infections could have been started. Bacteria was on their hands. And times this by 100 cows. This is what's happening on dairy farms. Well, not with little kids, but bacteria on the hands getting into the udders. And that's one of the causes of mastitis. So 30% of these dairy cows are killed annually due to this, like we talked about yesterday. 1 billion is lost in milk production, 2.7 billion is lost in killing these cows. And once again, 1% less would save 90 million per year. Problems with current technologies on top of that. So these are kind of competitors. Organoleptic testing is just separating milk on a platform. All you have to have is good sight and smell, not scientific at all. Microbiological analysis takes 24 to 48 hours to cultivate the bacteria to be able to test it. California and Wisconsin mastitis test does count somatic cells, so it's very scientific in that way, but you also, it's a gel that forms when a detergent is reacting with these cells. So you need to tell the consistency of this gel and be experienced with that. Or electrical conductivity, which a lot of bigger farmers do with computerized milking systems, but that does cost, for the most or least expensive one, it's about $200,000. So our customers are specifically organic dairy farmers. This is because they have larger margins, and when they lose the milk production, it's a lot more expensive. And they also have higher regulations on the cows that they have, no antibiotics. And so smaller farmers, because they don't already have these computerized milking systems. Market opportunity, this is just in the US, 42,000 just dairy farms in general. About 5% of these are organic, and then around 1,900 of these farms are smaller than 100 cows. Assumptions would be, one, farmers have cattle being infected by mastitis. If there's no infection, they don't need us. Farmers don't already have an efficient way of testing. If they're not okay with the way they are, then they will want us. If they're like, it's fine, then they won't want to be in contact with us. And then third, infections occur often enough that a cost-saving method is needed, so it has to be enough of a pain for us to be relevant. Questions, mostly to farm managers, milkers, anyone working there, or anyone in the quality assurance process of dairy. So how often do you check the quality? Do you have problems with your cows getting mastitis? Those are just really screening questions. So what methods do you use to treat them? Explain the most painful parts of infections and how you treat them. What do you like and what do you not like about your current methods? And then how is lost money recovered? So really just getting the process, their pains, what they would like better, what they don't like, and then just really asking why after all of those. And that's it.
So if you're an organic farmer and you have a cow with mastitis, like you couldn't treat them with an antibody because then they'd be...
Because then it wouldn't be organic.
It wouldn't be organic? Mm-hmm. Okay. What do they do? Just
usually kill them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can they sell them to another cow farmer? I guess they could, right?
That I don't know, but it's a good possibility.
Rough. Rough, man. Circle of life. All right, who's up? Come on down.
I don't have a PowerPoint.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Yeah, just talk. Hey, Bruce, can you hit the lights?
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm ready. So I didn't put a PowerPoint together, so you're going to have to look at me. Sorry about that. But so remember, we are Preventide. It's the name of the company, and the name of the product, our first product is AF-PEP. It's our only product, but that's okay. And I need you to keep those separate. So AF-PEP is useful for the treatment and prevention of breast cancer. So, if the question is, what is the problem that we're solving? If we think in terms of prevention, I think the problem that we're solving is avoiding the trauma of being diagnosed with breast cancer. I mean, think how that rolls out. A woman is going along living her life just fine, and if for some reason she has a suspicion, and so she hustles on down to the physician and says, let's get this checked out. The physician goes through his examination, takes a biopsy, trauma enough, yeah, and says, come back next week, we'll have your results for you. So the woman goes home, and day goes by, and day goes by, and she's thinking, If they got their test results back and I don't have cancer, surely they would call and tell me, and the phone call doesn't come. And so her anxiety is increasing throughout the week. She goes back next Monday with her husband. They go into the room and the doctor walks in and says, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, but your results came back positive and you do in fact have breast cancer." Now who needs to go through that, right? And neither her nor her husband hear anything else that the physician has to say for the rest of that hour, because their life is just in a whirl. If we could solve that problem, that would be a problem worth solving. On the other hand, if the problem that we want to solve is the treatment, if a woman already has breast cancer, then I think the problem we're solving is what I call efficacy without toxicity. Because there are other drugs that will treat breast cancer, but they have side effects and toxicity. And what I preach in all my publications is that the standard of drug development should be efficacy without toxicity. Because right now there's these these are white guys in a lab somewhere developing drugs, and they say, well, it works and it has acceptable toxicity. Acceptable to whom? So if we can get to efficacy without toxicity, I think that's a problem worth solving as well. So the question is, who are our customers? Well, again, here's what I need you to keep in mind: Preventide versus AFPEP. So last night I alluded to that Preventide might sell or license itself, sell. And there, we're talking about marketing to big pharma. So I'm answering two questions there: who are the customers and how big is the market? If we try to sell the IP to big pharma, and the market is 6 or a dozen big pharma companies. Okay, there's a concept. On the other hand, if what we're trying to sell is AFPEP, then the market might be the insurance companies, because they're going to pay for it. So we're talking 100 or a couple hundred insurance companies that might buy. Okay, I get that. If you want to think about actually selling it to who's going to diagnose, the physicians, we're probably talking in the thousands of physicians that prescribe for breast cancer. You want to think about the patients, how many patients actually have breast cancer now? It's a couple million. If you want to think about at-risk women who are going to use this for prevention, well, that's probably the number of breast cancer patients times 6 or 7 relatives apiece. Yeah, so we're talking tens of millions. If you want to think of prevention like HPV is used for prevention, then it might be all women. So somewhere our market is somewhere between 6 and everybody. So those are the concepts we're working with. You ask for what are the top assumptions, or I call them risks. What are the risks that are involved? And again, I think here in terms of the product and the company and the indication. So if the product is AFPEP, we're fairly far along the drug development pipeline. We're past discovery. A lot of this has been de-risked already. So for treatment, I'm not really worried too much about the risks. For prevention, we can't show prevention in humans yet. I suppose a risk is that it might not work for prevention in humans, but I've got some backup positions for that. A risk might be pricing. I can make this drug really inexpensively, but what pharma is going to charge for it is, and if the product is Preventide, the company or the IP itself, I assume a pharmaceutical company would be interested in a drug that is effective and does not have toxicity. But maybe they got their own product. Maybe they won't be interested in this. So I need to go out and ask all those kinds of people. Like since I need to talk to insurance companies, the big pharmas. I haven't got a clue how to do that yet. But I could just start by asking you a question. Does anybody want to invest? Did you bring your checkbook along? Talk.
I want to invest using Bitcoin. Good stuff. Come on in.
So it's the 5 minutes.
Take it away.
All right, so I'm Michaela again. I am working with the SRJ collar, which stands for Self Robotics Jamming Collar.
So imagine you're an emergency medical technician. You show up on scene to an accident. You got an unconscious person. You don't know if they have a cervical spine injury or not, and you have to put a cervical collar on them. So you have to go through all these steps. You gotta put your fingers up against their neck, size their neck, take the cervical collar out of the package, roll it up, make it flexible, size that as well. Lots and lots of steps. What if you could just pull something out of a package, slide it under their neck, clip it together, press a button, and it automatically sizes itself to the specific person's neck? Well, that's what I'm trying to do with this. So the problem, current cervical collars are not as effective, safe, or easy to use as they could be. And like I said yesterday, the three main issues are mouth opening. So as you can see here, it doesn't look too comfortable. You're kind of pressing up on the chin. So that can close a person's mouth by 25% or more. And with that, if you're trying to do a medical procedure such as intubation, that is pretty much impossible. And EMTs I've talked to said, like, yeah, we just kind of take the collar off at that point. Another issue, vertebrae separation, as you can see there, pushing up again and separating the vertebrae back here, probably not the best idea if you have an injury in that area. And finally, intracranial pressure. So with this one, you can see the red ones are the arteries, the blue ones are the veins. The veins are the ones that drain blood from your head. And since they're closer to the side, if the cervical collar is too tight, it will cut off the venous drainage, creating more pressure in your head, which in turn can give you symptoms such as nausea, headaches, all sorts of bad stuff. So my customers, EMTs, hospitals, insurance companies, patients, but as you can see, the ones with the money are the hospitals and insurance companies. That's who's going to be buying this. And I know, this looks like a lot of writing on one slide. So going through the total available market, you've got about 5 million cases per year of people that just have a spine injury. And coming down from that, you want to focus on who's going to use or distribute this. And for me, that's EMTs, hospitals, insurance companies. And from talking to an EMT in New York City, he was saying that every day they use about 5 cervical collars, and over the course of the year they use so many, and estimated it out to, in New York City alone, about 1.4 million cervical collars used. Because you show up, you gotta see if they have a spine injury, slap it on, see if it's all good. And from my research, there are about 248,000 EMTs currently in the US. So that number fluctuates every year, of course, but think about that times 5. And that's just your base layer of how many of these things are going out per year in the US alone. So assumptions to make this work, gonna have to see if the current model is hard or tedious to use. It takes a long time, challenging to put on. You gotta see if it's uncomfortable or doesn't fit correctly for the patient themselves. And then, are people willing to pay more for a safer or more effective product? I'm thinking yes, but hospitals, insurance companies may be thinking no. Questions I'm gonna use to determine this: have you or a friend ever worn or used a cervical collar? And if they say yes, go through follow-up questions. How did you use it? What did you think of using it? Did you like it? Did you not? For the general customer, do you even know how a cervical collar is used or how to apply one? And have them explain that. And then you get further along in your conversation, how much would you be willing to spend on a new product? And specifically, if you knew it was going to be safer or more effective, would you be willing to spend more? Who will I ask? EMTs, hospitals, insurance companies. I'm going to start local, but I also have connections in New York City, so I'm talking to them as well. And hopefully, by the end of this, have a lot of research and be able to accurately gauge the customers. That's what I got.
Now, the money question there is always tough. How much would you be willing to spend? Because people will say, $20. I'm like, yeah, it's like $2,000, okay? Like, so that's a hard one to really get a good answer out of. The other thing with you, like, should really, well, with everybody, follow the money. How do they currently buy? Who's in the decision-making tree for buying a cervical collar that goes on every ambulance or something? Like, who makes that decision? Is it the EMTs? Is it, some chief? Is it the state? Like, I don't know. So that kind of thing. Okay, who else? Get up. Oh, then you.
I don't have a PowerPoint.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Or Word docs. I can read off the phone.
There you go. Yeah, just do that.
Yeah, cool. All right. Okay, so I'll start with the story. I think the damnedest thing in America is that if you don't own something, it's really easy to find it, right? So like if you don't have like a nice like Yeti water cooler or whatever, you can go like search up like, I want a cool water cooler on Google, and then like 5 ads will pop up, and like the top Amazon link will pop up. You can go buy that, and that's sweet. And then you know that it's probably in an Amazon warehouse. It'll get fulfilled, and then it'll get shipped to your door. And like everybody else who sold you that item will know exactly where that is until you get it. And then once you get it, you're in charge of keeping track of that item. That sucks, right? So that's the problem that I kind of want to solve for you. So like, where are your things? Like, for instance, when's the last time, if you have a hobby, like, and that hobby has like a very critical item to it, and you probably put it in a box somewhere, maybe you have like a box for your hobbies, maybe you don't. Like I personally make electronic boards and stuff like that. I have a soldering iron and a kit that goes somewhere, and I'm in college, so it's either on this coast, it's on the other coast, maybe it's at like my frat house, maybe it's at the actual house, who knows? It's places, right? So where is that, and can it be tracked? And if you're a company, you have a lot of production items that you need to track, like tools. You have inventories that change dynamically, and like you don't always know their state. And if you do know their state, you probably pay someone like a decent amount of money, like a full salary, to keep track of your stuff, as either a stockroom employee, or like you have an intern, or you have like somebody who's just in track of, literally keeping track of what you have, and also organizing. So we have a physical inventory tracking system that hopefully can automate most of that process. And I'll start talking on my points now. That was kind of like my ending. All right, so customers. I actually see 3 segments for this. So I see like the low end people, which is more like myself, like hobbyists or like household users. Because originally our technology came out of like making a smart fridge insert. So instead of having to have a camera that tracks stuff in your fridge and like guess on actual like inventory change in your fridge, you could just have like a weight-based system that would tell you like, okay, like you're probably gonna like, based on previous usage, you've used 5 ounces of orange juice, you're probably gonna run out in like a week, and then it could do dynamic like, ordering for you for inventory tracking. So that same exact process holds true for like, if you're a factory, say you make widgets and widgets have like subcomponent A, B, and C, and you run out of like B at a certain rate, we can move into that market. So it works for houses, it works for small businesses, light industrial, people who manufacture things. Then it also works for pharmaceutical companies. As far as sizing goes, so household users, so I'm thinking that like anybody who makes about over $150,000 a year probably owns a lot of stuff in America. That's like my hypothesis. And if you own a lot of stuff, you probably don't know where a lot of stuff is. So there are 24 million people in America that probably own a lot of stuff and want to know what would pay to save an hour or 2 of their time a week searching for things. Because like I personally track my own time searching for things, and maybe I just have a terrible memory, but I spend about an hour a week searching for stuff. And not just like, where's my hairbrush? It's like, where is, you know, A item for B activity. It's bad. All right, so then light industrial. That's so there are 120,000 people in the light industrial market, and then my way to size that was there's 12 million people who work in factories. So I figure like a typical working group of people, like if you're a person, you typically know 150 people. So if you're in a factory, even if it's really big, your working group is probably around 100 to 150. So I divided 12 million by 100 and got 120,000. So maybe like one group of people would have like one group of things assigned to them that they need to keep accountability for, so they could be aided by an automated system that would keep count of their stuff. And then pharmaceutical market. So there's 60,000 individual pharmacies in America. And as far as I know, like I don't work in a pharmacy. If you're a nurse, like or something, talk to me because I want to find out more about this. They keep track of medication, and then I'm pretty sure it's literally just like, we took out 5 pills, and there's probably a lot of error, and I imagine that like having error on controlled substances and not knowing exactly how much is left is like a big problem. So that's something I'm going to investigate more. Okay, cool. So top 5 assumptions. A, people spend a lot of time searching for things they already own. B, searching for things one owns is not desirable. Like it sucks to spend time searching for them. C, people will actually pay money to save the time searching for stuff. And D, my inventory tracking system can actually track their inventories because maybe they have a really complex thing that can actually be tracked automatically. And E, there's no large legal issues or inhibiting like barriers to entry to going in. Maybe like I want to go track guns for the government. It's like, is there regulation on that? Like, do I have to be like FDA compliant if I'm tracking food? That's kind of an issue. So questions I'll ask. What are the last 3 memorable, this is today. So the last 3 memorable times you had to find something you owned. Did you have this problem at home or at work? And if you did, like, where do you work? So do you trust like AI and like computers to track your stuff, or would you be okay with things to be tracked? And have you ever rebought an item because you lost it? So that's kind of what I'm going to go. Thank you.
Cool. A lot of you guys are going to have competitive products, which is nothing. You know, so doing nothing is competition for you. Like, I lose tools all the time.
Yeah.
You know, do I want to use that? Great, I lose tools all the time. But you're displacing me doing nothing. You know, like, so you gotta.
Then like I think that's good for like home users, if you're a company and people are doing nothing in your
Yeah. For a company, they're actually wasting time. You can quantify that and all that. My time at home looking for a tool, I just feel like, I'm an idiot. I'll find it.
I personally like I lose something that's Walmartable or like Amazonable. It's like all right, cool, $5.
Right. It's all right. It happens. Yeah, just let me first thing.
Started. So to remind you of what I want to do with this company, basically what we want is to create a service for creating customizable chatbots. In particular, what kind of chatbots, right? So there has been, I guess most of you so far has been interacted with some of the chatbots, either through Siri or on your phone or Google Smart Home, or Alexa has this intelligent speaker that can talk to you as well. But they're not quite like the AI, we call them AI, but they're not quite like the AI that we had in mind, at least what I had in mind when I grew up, right? They're not quite like R2D2, they're not quite like data. So sort of like the way of, if you look at how you interact with them, it's a very, what we call user-dominated way. So you ask a question and the bot gives you answers. So where's the nearest restaurant, the bot tells you. But almost never initiate a conversation with you. They don't volunteer information. They don't say things. And that is a problem. I mean, that's not a problem for what they're doing so far, but that is a problem hurting them from being treated like a human. And that's not a big problem if you don't want those bots to be talking with your user all the time. If you don't want the user to talk with the bots even though they don't have a specific task in mind. And so basically in a lot of the scenarios when you want to know another person deeply, you want to know like what is their hobby, what is their preference, you do want the bots to be able to sort of like get personal with the user. So what we are proposing to do is this customized service for helping other companies or literally or individuals if they have the needs of creating a chatbot based on the task that they want, but also personalize the chatbot. So what are the, how large is my market? So part of the market sort of need to be developed. So most of the major IT companies has a chatbot nowadays. All of the things, every company that you can name, right? Even Adobe has a chatbot, or Slack has a chatbot. Not mentioning all of Microsoft and all of these major companies. And medium-sized business start to looking into ways of using chatbots to replace their existing customer service. There has been a market. But exactly who will pay for such service depends on partially on their needs, whether they need the bot to do more than what they're doing, whether they have the interest of invest money into this. So there are several assumptions for this service to be sold. One is the bot needs to be easily available for target users. So if the target user doesn't use a computer, doesn't use a cell phone, that's a problem. Second assumption, the company believes the interactive bot is better than their current static way of advertising or doing customer survey. The cost for developing such bots is affordable, which is really arguable. So what question will I ask? So for potential customers, my potential customers really companies that will be willing to purchase such service. So I will be asking what they're currently doing for collecting feedbacks on their products. What are users sending? How do they send advertisements to their target users? And do you think this current way is efficient? Are they happy with it? So the end user, like everyone sitting here, are not my target customer, at least at this moment in mind. However, I would also like to result, both of the end users for what kind of chatbots behavior are what you're looking for, and what kind of behaviors are you totally cannot tolerate. And hopefully those will be working into ways of how I will be interacting with those companies. So who will I ask? Like I said, basically two types of people. One are companies that potentially has the needs of purchasing such chatbots. The other is just everyone in the world who may be using such, who may be interacting with the bot. I guess that's all in the slide.
All right. Do you think it would ever be possible to have a chat bot that you could actually use for customer discovery? So something that scours, like just picture though, like, hey chatbot, tell me about the last time you bought cryptocurrency. And then you talk about it.
Yes.
I don't know.
In a way, well, in principle, yes. In practice, it's how much time and money you want to spend in it. There's no secret in AI.
Think you could make that like during the course of this class, like just kind of.
Depends on how much cash I can get.
We got $3,000, man, and free food. That was cool. All right. Good stuff. I think we have one more.
If we download by an animation, actually.
Yeah.
We'll get this there first.
Okay, man. We can't use the clicker now because I got the, yeah, you gotta use it here. Yeah, because I got this.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for presenting the inspiring talks. I think if we see the common theme for what we did today is much larger than what we are really doing. The common theme is, for me, in this situation, is the patient. What we are trying to do is design a device to prevent the intraoperative tumor embolism. The device name we put it as M-Block. My name is Sridhar Misuku. I am an anesthesiologist working at Albany Medical Center. My day starts with around 6 o'clock in the morning and ends around 4:30. I see many patients who come with cancers who have potential risk for embolizing in the operating room. We see around 10 to 12 patients of renal cell carcinoma patients. So what problem do I want to solve? I would like to solve a problem where a kidney tumor invades the vein and possibly going into the heart during the surgical manipulation of the tumor. And the second application would be for clots forming in the legs, that is blood clots. They can also migrate into the heart and block the heart. The common aspect is patient may die in the operating room. As an anesthesiologist, I see the patient's numbers because the patient will be asleep, the numbers going down, the blood pressure going down, and I do monitor the heart using transesophageal echo. That is a simple ultrasound machine goes into the food pipe and I see the heart stop. The most important impact, I believe, for all these aspects going on in the operating room is for the patients and patients' family. Mostly these patients come from home, and when the patient comes early in the morning, it's a major surgery, 6:30 in the morning. We start at 7 o'clock, and when we inform the bad news, around 10 to 20, 30% of the patients have this type of complication for that particular procedure. When we inform the bad news somewhere around 11 or 12 o'clock, that has a big impact on that. So that's the problem I would like to solve. If I have a look at the animation, I would like to just state the device of my device, M-Block, goes from the neck, and when we have a proximal control which can be turned clockwise or anti-clockwise, the basket deploys, and this is a tumor which is possibly going into the heart during the surgical manipulation. The kidney tumor invading the heart, and then blocking the heart. I just want to play it again. The device inserted from the neck, and we turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise depending upon the design. It has an umbrella which blocks the tumor, and it will stop the tumor from entering into the heart, especially when the surgeon is manipulating the tumor. So from the market point of view, I do not know what I will ask when I go to the farmer's market today. I may have to buy some vegetables for cooking in the evening, but I cannot explain this condition. From the market point of view, kidney tumor and DVT, kidney tumor is the 9th most common tumor, a total of around 64,000 cases. 6 to 12% of the patients get this tumor in the IVC, that is grade 3 and grade 4 tumors. So, which accounts for around 2,500 to 8,000 cases in America. And around 14,400 deaths per year occur for the whole condition. DVT is a much larger market, 5 to 600,000 cases per year of pulmonary embolism can happen. Even if we have a target of around 1 to 2% of this market, it will be a bigger market. From the customer point of view, I see myself as a customer, but the patient's first encounter is the surgeon. When the surgeon sees these patients, urologists or vascular surgeons or emergency department physicians, they are the first people who I would like to target them. From the radiologist point of view, they are also the customers because they insert these catheters from the neck into the position what we talked about. As anesthesiologist, I interviewed many anesthesiologists and surgeons. They all agree that there is a clinical need for this type of device. From the patient's point of view, it is important for me that the patient's family has to have a good news and with less morbidity. The current treatment which is available after the embolization happens is much more invasive, and patients do suffer a lot of complications with that. From the payer point of view, I spoke to one person in my last BSCC Academy presentation. The CDPHP is the primary insurance carrier, and I asked him whether he will be paying for this type of device or not. If I say like 10 to 12 cases per year, I'm going to see this, and I'm going to use 10 to 12 devices like this in Albany Medical Center, they're in agreement that they will be able to pay for this type of device. I didn't ask any other insurance carriers. That's the only one person I encountered. From assumptions point of view, these are the assumptions I put in.
Okay, that's the last of our presentation. Pretty cool to see I'll get you injected here. Pretty cool to see the diversity of people we have in this cohort. Everybody's got different customers, different ways to approach them and things like that. So, you guys selling widgets may be easier than him trying to sell some medical device that goes in or some drug or something, things like that. But we're all going to learn and grow together. I'll turn it over to Matt real quick. Say a few things.
All right, so my question. You got your sheet of paper? You know you're going to be challenged again. Remember, first thing I need you to write down is how many teams presented since I last spoke. All right. Now I need you to write down the story you remember. Don't write your own. And we'll start over here on Bruce's side. Where did you remember?
Cancer.
Which one?
The number of cases, I wrote down as 12. I don't know if that's correct.
Well, I want to know the one you remember.
The story I remember is about the forensics.
Okay.
You know, because we watch a lot of these investigative.
Good. So the teams that get called out, do you keep track? So that's your team and forensics.
Just to the point of observation. That's why we went first.
Would you remember?
The cow thing.
The cow.
The dairy.
Dairy
cow.
Yep.
No, not actually, even the neck. Even the gentleman.
No, but we'll go with dairy cow first. Who's your first?
Like your cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency?
The cancer story.
The cancer story? You keep your track, you guys have to keep the numbers, because I'll never remember all.
They check out the face login.
The what?
They check out the face, like the images of the face, like make
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's you guys. Cows.
Look at the cows.
Look at the cows.
The breast cancer.
Breast cancer? Story. I didn't know it was about cancer. It's amazing what motivates us.
The cancer story.
Cancer story.
The breast cancer?
The breast cancer story.
Breast cancer story.
He loses stuff. What's that? He loses stuff. He doesn't die. He loses stuff. Yeah.
There's the cow.
The cows. Forensics. Cows. Stuff. That's you.
How emergency room, tumor, the disinfecting stuff, the color.
Yeah. But cows was first.
Well, I wrote it down first.
Okay, that's what I mean. Okay, so who do you think had the, like now that you've heard everybody and what they recall, who do you think had the most powerful story? I would give you my vote as well. I had goosebumps when he was telling me that story. I promise you, the next time I see you, I will still remember that story. Find a story that every time somebody asks you what you are doing with your startup, nobody cares about the technology. Stop. Tell them your story, because that's what they're going to remember. Has everybody got the message here? You can see the power of the story. All right. We're on a break now.
Take a break.
It was 12. You were right.
I actually want to ask my system real quick before I go. The strength of the cohort is that you guys help each other out. So if you heard something and you know a contact that might help that person, let them know. And to go along with that, a lot of your presentations sort of contact information. So I had some ideas about the presentations. I couldn't find out how to email your contact other than find you here. So exactly. So the presentations include and think about how you can help each other introduce each other to people that might connect with somebody or some give good customer interviews or help them to find some way. That's really strengthening. So,
Yeah, no kidding. Go see Quibbling.
Yeah, I'm serious. Like, why don't we all connect? I'm really serious. Like, this is not pajamas. It's actually going to help. It's a networking.
There you go, man. All right, guys, we'll take a 5-minute break. Walk around, stretch your legs. You want to see this real quick?
I'll give you Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'll check it. I got it now, but like I'll check to make sure. Good. Like I had an office right here on the floor, so
I think it was
Really a random.
So if you look at my profile, media network companies, all people.
You are you from Syria?
No, that's just been
Oh, you are.
Wait. I would use that.
So it's, but a lot of people
All right. Are you guys all set to go up?
Where?
And do your customer discovery at the market?
It's our best.
Oh, yeah, no, thanks for giving me it. I was going to send it to you. I'm glad you got the question.
All right, guys, let's start gathering back. Everybody gather around. Let's go. You're listening. You guys are a good team. All right, let's go. Farmers market. Wait. Matt, what I'll do, I'll truck through like 3-4 slides. So, break out and do some of that shit. Whatever you want to. Just do this real quick. All right, guys. So, like I said last night, the real focus for us right off the bat is going to be this value proposition and who are your target customers. As you can see, I mean, everybody has different target customers, and a lot of them are actually quite difficult to understand who they are. Cows, like dairy farmers and stuff like that, organic dairy farmers and things. Well, cows aren't going to buy it, but people with money. The dairy farmer, that's a pretty straightforward one to put your finger on. But, you know, a better rosacea cream that can help people out, even though, you know, your product is really good and it solves problems. Who's the customer? And that's hard to find sometimes, you know. So you gotta figure out who the customer is, and then go talk to them. Who's the person with the money? Who's going to be paying you the money? And how are those decision-making processes done? So again, you guys could complicated customer. How do they currently buy? This is one thing you could study. Like, how do they currently buy something that's competitive? And how are those decisions made for how they're buying that kind of thing right now? A value proposition, again, this is the template just to keep hammering it home. A value proposition is not just a list of attributes. Oh, my thing is beautiful and it's cheap and it's fast. Like, no, it's not a list of attributes. A value proposition is for my target customer who wants or needs a compelling reason, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're going to be asked to write a value proposition, and this is the form I want it to take, okay? So that's how a real value proposition is written up. Key questions for your value prop. You got to understand, you know, what's the problem? Again, we've hammered that home. For whom is it relevant? Who's the customer? Or how are they doing it today? How big is this problem? Is it a huge issue? All these type of things. So you got to think about all these kind of things when you're doing your value proposition. I'm going to show you a little video after this, and then Matt's going to take over. But we're going to get into an exercise where we're going to do a value proposition canvas. This is so important. There's a whole canvas written on this. How about that? The form of it is not that important. The process is important. So there's, well, I'll let the video explain it because it's even better than hearing my words. How about that? And hopefully this works. Okay, let's see. We have sound.
Every day, companies design products and services to improve their customers' lives. But 72% of new product and service innovations fail to deliver on expectations. This means that customers don't care about 7 out of 10 new products introduced to the market. It doesn't have to be this way. Just like you create value for your business with a business model canvas, there is in fact a tool to intentionally visualize, design, and test how you create value for customers. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas. The Value Proposition Canvas is composed of 2 parts, the customer profile and the value map. With the customer profile, you describe the jobs your customer's trying to get done. Jobs can be functional, like getting from A to B, social, like impressing friends and colleagues, or emotional, like gaining peace of mind. You highlight your customer's pains, which annoy customers while trying to get a job done. Pains are negative outcomes that customers hope to avoid, like dissatisfaction with existing solutions and challenges, frustrations, risks, or obstacles related to performing a job. And you outline customer gains, which describe how customers measure the success of a job well done. Gains are positive outcomes that customers hope to achieve, like concrete results, benefits, and even aspirations. Use the customer profile to visualize, test, and track your understanding of the people or companies you intend to create value for. It's a map that becomes clearer the more you learn about your customers. The second part of the canvas is the value map. With it, you list the products and services your value proposition builds on. You describe in which way these products, services, and features are pain relievers, how they eliminate, reduce, or minimize pains customers care about, making their life easier. And you outline in which way they are gain creators, how they produce, increase, or maximize outcomes and benefits that your customers expect, desire, or will be surprised by. The value map makes explicit how your products and services relieve pains and create gains. Use it to design, test, and iterate your value proposition until you figure out what resonates with customers. You achieve fit by creating a clear connection between what matters to customers and how your products, services, and features ease pains and create gains. Great value propositions target essential customer jobs, pains, and gains and do so extremely well. Your customer profile may contain countless jobs, pains, and gains, but your value map highlights which ones you intend to focus on. And don't forget, an outstanding value proposition can still fail if your business model is flawed. Successful companies embed outstanding value propositions in scalable and profitable business models. Use the value proposition canvas to create products and services that customers want. Get started at strategizer.com.
How about that? Even better than just hearing my words. How about that? So this is a really important step, this whole value proposition and target markets. So you gotta get this right before you really move on to the rest of the canvas. Okay? Otherwise you ain't got nothing. So you gotta find your target customer and what value do you bring to them. So I'm gonna turn it over to my man Matt.
It's a tough act to follow, isn't it? How many people think Clint is entertaining? Show up. Yes. Yes. Last year when we did this, he put up slides, I don't know if you showed them yet, of us standing there saluting the American flag. Did you use it again?
Yeah. They started. A lot of people stood up.
Yeah. They should, right? So, what I want to talk about is how many of you are inventors? Show of hands. If you're the inventor, are you really proud of what you've invented? Yeah. Right? Are those the first words that you want to come out of your mouth when somebody says, "What are you doing?" Like, is that the thing that, think about it. I want you to think. Is that the thing you want to share when somebody says, "What are you doing?" I can't wait to tell you. Right? I want you to write 2 words down and 1 punctuation. Who cares? Really, who cares? And I don't mean it in the derogatory sense. What I want you to think about when you want to talk about the invention is, do they really care? Right? What do you think the person that asks you a question really cares about? Do they care about the invention? Let's talk about it. What do they really care about?
Their own problem.
Okay, write this down. That is dead nuts on. They want to talk about their own problem. When you do a customer interview, you need to understand at a very high level of detail what their problem is. It's not about you at all. Write that down. It's not about me. Write it down. You will need to say it to each other. When you're doing customer interviews, you're going to be in the middle of it and go, yeah, I'm talking about me again. Sorry, thanks for reminding me. It's going to happen. Okay? So I've been doing this for more than a decade. So it's second nature for me to set aside what I think and really have some level of empathy for the person I'm talking to. So I want you to get ready to say to your teammates 2 words. What are those 2 words? Who cares? And it's not insulting. If the answer is me, then you're talking about the wrong thing. All right, here's the second part of who cares. If you're the inventor, you want to talk about all the things it can do. Is that true? Show of hands. Yeah. Okay? Who cares? I hope you do, because you're the inventor. But does the customer value it the same as you? Think about this. What does the customer value? If they want to talk about their problem, what does the customer really value? Speak up.
The solution.
The solution. Oh, you cheater, you've been in a class before. The solution. Write that down. The customer values a solution to their problem. How are you going to find out what solution they value? You're going to what? You're going to talk to them. I'm going to change that just slightly. She's on the right track. How do I want that to be worded? You're going to what? Listen. Listen to them. So now I got 4 more words I want you to write down. Shut up and listen. It's not in a derogatory sense, but you got to be able to say it to each other. Shut up and listen. It's not meant to be rude, but sometimes you got to tell. We get excited. I'm an inventor too. You get excited. You got to okay. Cool your jets. Feel free to say shut up and listen. I'm giving you permission to do it in a nice way. Okay? Does this make sense? Okay. So of all the pitches you saw this morning, which one do you think you understand what the problem was and what the solution was? Other than your own. God help me, I hope you understand your own. Which one do you think best encapsulated? Yeah, they know what the problem is, and I think they know what the solution is. Go ahead.
Breast cancer.
Breast cancer. I would agree with that. Do you remember his story at the beginning? The woman goes in. I will tell you that is the most agonizing week for a family. There's no way to get around it. And I don't care what cancer it is. It is the most awful week of your life. All right, so clearly I knows the problem. He clearly has a sense of the solution. And you remember it. You get the idea of what a value proposition is? All right, so your goal today, when you go out, is I want you to be able to talk to people at the farmer's market, in your intended market space, so I'm going to pick a market, you're going to do the solar, right?
Yep.
So what would an opening line for Mark be as you walk up to somebody randomly at the farmer's market? He can't say it. You guys say it. That's a good one, but it's very open. That's very open.
Come here often.
Come here often? You're starting a conversation. That's legit. What's the next question? Think about it for mine.
So, do you use solar energy?
Okay. Do you use solar energy? What could you ask? Think about it like a date. What could you ask first?
How much is your energy bill?
How much is your energy bill?
How do you get energy for your business?
How do you get energy for your business? Good.
Do you own a home in this area?
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't put her up to this, but she's had the good answers now. Do you own a home? Do you pay an electric bill? You see how that's fundamental? And it's an easy question for somebody to answer. Okay? Don't ask about solar. What kind of energy? Oh, you do. What kind of energy do you use? I don't know, whatever National Grid gives me. So here's a customer who pays for energy and doesn't pay attention to it. You follow that? Now another response could be, oh, I went to the Choice website and I searched through all the competitors, so I use NYPA for my electricity, that's the New York Power Authority, and then I use NYSEG for my natural gas. Right? Now that's somebody that knows their energy and has made a choice. Do you see how they're different customers? Does the conversation go differently from there? Yes. Okay? So what you need to do before we finish today is come up with those easy conversational questions. Who had the neck brace discussion? That was you, right? So you could ask, do you play sports? Do you watch sports? Okay. I'm talking about injuries that happen in sports or automobile accidents. Are you familiar with that? Could you walk through it? You're probably going to get about half the population to name what sport for head injuries right now. Football. Okay? Don't be surprised. Let the conversation go where it goes. All right? Your goal is to find out what they think the problem is. Because what you come back to is going to be what I call a painkiller. Okay? What do you think the painkiller is another name for? Solution. Write that down. Painkiller is a solution. It removes a problem. Ribo. How many cows are eliminated because of an infection every year? What's the percent? Do you remember? You said 50? 30. It is 30%. Okay? So if what you're going to do is reduce that from 30% to 20% in the first 3 years, and then reduce that by 90% of the remaining 30%, that's a big impact. That's a painkiller. Do you get the gist of this? Do you talk about that in the first conversation that you guys are going to have? Yes or no? No. All right, so now I need, for my analogy, I used to teach at RPI with Clint and a few others, and I used to always use this example, and I got a funny laugh. Okay, how many of you have been on a date? Show of hands. How many of you have been on a date where you couldn't wait for the date to end? Okay? Can you tell me why you couldn't wait for the date to end? Don't name the person, don't embarrass anybody, but tell me why.
The person just wasn't very interesting.
They weren't interested.
Conversation wasn't flowing.
Conversation wasn't flowing. Any others?
They talk too much.
They talk too much. Do you get the gist of what you should not do today? Yes or no? Okay? So what's the word I want you to do most? Listen. Okay? Do not at all talk about your solution. Because you may, in fact, have the wrong solution. Got it? What do you have to do? It starts with the letter P if you have the wrong solution. Pivot. Okay? If you can pivot and still solve the problem, you have a painkiller. So the other side is the gain next. No, the hypotheses. So these are examples that we wrote over the last 10 years of things that people have told us. Again, treat it like that first date today. You're not talking about you. You want somebody to speak to you so you can learn. Got it? Yes or no? I need a... Okay. So these are things that we've heard. So now, what's the difference between a problem and a need? Just think you're human beings. What's the difference between a problem and a need? I don't want a textbook definition. I want your definition. A need is something they want to pay money for. Somebody else?
Something that they can't live without or go on. Problem we can kind of ignore and still live with it.
Yeah. Do people kind of half fix the problem you're addressing today with breath? Yeah. They've kind of made up ways to do it. Right? So you're going to find that the problem is addressed in ways you have no idea sitting here today. I promise you, one of the things that's going to happen by the end of eyesight is you're going to learn how people solve the problem. 6 weeks ago, I had no idea. 4 weeks ago, I had no idea. And I never would have thought of that in a million years. Why do you need to know how they solve the problem?
To see if you can offer something better.
I want you to write that down. Every way they address the problem, compare what you can do to it. Do you tell them? No. Every time they have an alternative solution, write it down in as much fidelity and detail as you can. You're going to have to put the amount of time it takes to do that. The social impact of what it is to do that alternative solution. The financial impact to do that solution. You get the gist of what happens when they tell you how they're solving the problem? Okay. So the need is something that people they can't live without. Okay? So you have to figure out the differences here. If you can fill a need, you'll probably get somebody to pay for it. Gain creators. I want to give you an example. So I was part of the company X-ray optical systems. You can kind of guess what we did. The name's pretty clear, right? So in X-ray optical systems, we made an analyzer. How many people know what acid rain is? When's the last time you heard of acid rain in the news? All right, so the people that look like they're as old as me, do you remember reading about acid rain about at least once a week? Here's a true fact. The reason you don't hear about acid rain is since 2006, sulfur has been reduced in diesel fuel and home heating oil to a level where it's barely recognizable. So it's not going out the tailpipe or up the chimney, coming down as rain. There is a company, a startup, they're no longer a startup, the Danaher Corporation bought them in 2010, that makes about 99% of the compliance to get sulfur out of diesel fuel. Next time you go to the gas pump, look and it'll say ULSD, ultra low sulfur diesel fuel. East Greenbush, New York is where all that compliance comes from. Does that sound remarkable? Okay? The story is clear. We filled a need when we went to the refineries and we watched how they were trying to get the diesel fuel out. Okay? We listened. We actually went and listened. It's remarkable what you will get. And when we removed that pain, they were trying to buy the analyzer from us before we had it for commercial sale. That's what I hope happens to every single person in this room. If you understand the problem at a level that they want to buy it from you before you're ready to sell it. You get the gist? Is that a good problem to have? Yes. Okay? All right, game creators. Same idea, but you're going to create a game. So our game creator, I'll use the sulfur analyzer. Our game creator was we fixed an environmental problem that belonged to who? The entire planet. Okay? So I used to teach this course with a guy, Bert Swersey at RPI. And the thing that the students always said they remembered is I would tell them, don't do anything that wastes your time. Do something that impacts a billion people. A billion with a B. Not a billion, a billion with a B. Okay? And that sulfur analyzer created a game. The EPA was happy. Governments around the world that could get that compliance were happy. Do you see the game creator? Now, I gave you that story. Did any of it have to do with the functionality of the analyzer? Did I tell you a single bit of high energy physics? What's that?
I wish I could understand.
Well, you can ask me later. I'll fill you in. Because I'm happy to talk about it, like everybody in this room. Yes?
So sometimes, and it's not true of all products, but sometimes when you talk to people and you're listening, you know, people have a problem articulating their problem.
Yes. So what you need to do is talk to them long enough or move on to the next conversation. It's a difficult thing. You don't want to be rude, but sometimes people they're in a hurry, they're having a bad day, they're having a really good day, so they're excited to get through the day and they can't focus the energy to give you the conversation. So there is a point where I promise you it's going to happen today. If you talk to at least 10 people, somebody's going to start talking to you and go, all right, I got to go. Okay? So don't worry about it. Don't take offense to it. Right? Don't get arrested. I say that with all kidding aside. I did this in New York City, and I had people that did a facial recognition software. They were from Florida, and they said, well, we can help people recognize when they're lying in an interview. Right? So they walked over to the airport, to the Homeland Security office, to ask them how they detect people in a lie. Homeland Security immediately thought that was kind of suspicious. And one of us had to drive over there and pick them up. In San Francisco, Steve Blank, who made some of this stuff, he had a student in his class, this is a great story, who had something that would help people in the ER. We actually had him, they came to RPI and he told the story. So he went to the ER and he just sat in the ER to do interviews with people. Well, pretty soon he had like 4 or 5 people sitting around him because he was listening. What do people want to do when you're listening? Talk. So they asked, the security came over and they said, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm a student at University of California, San Francisco, and I'm working on this project. We're funded by the National Science Foundation. Because they were ready to throw the cuffs on him, right? And so the security, as he heard what he was trying to do, said, okay, so we have a no soliciting policy in the ER. And they were very, very kind to this young man. They took him by and they said, can you pack up? You can't hang out with this in the ER. And they said, as they were walking into the door, the 2 security officers, one of them looked at him and said, so we're only responsible up to this line, you're on the floor. Our student looked at him like quizzically, like, Okay, and it took him like 3 seconds. And he went, oh! Took a chair, sat on this side of the line, and nobody bothered. Okay, so don't get in trouble, but don't be surprised if somebody's uncomfortable with you doing the interview process. Okay? Your goal is to find pains or gains. Okay? The gain create, all this stuff, we talk about all these hypotheses. I don't like to go through them because you can read them. I'm going to give you the context around them. You have access to these slides. These are just a summary of lessons learned over the last about decade, maybe 12 years by now. Okay? Make somebody's life easier. Think about the breast cancer. You're going to make somebody's life significantly easier. All right. So, value proposition. These are very, very common mistakes. Take a second and read them. Why do I want you to see these? What have you been taught since you were a little kid?
Not to repeat mistakes.
Yeah, to learn from other people's mistakes. So your job as a cohort is if you see somebody making these mistakes, I need you to gently say something to them. Okay? The culture, if this were a class, when I were teaching this as a cohort, I would tell you the culture I want you to have is relentlessly direct, but with respect. Does that make sense? You have to be able to say the truth, but don't do it in a demeaning or a mean way. Think about who you're talking to before you say it. But the easiest and laziest thing to do is I'm just going to tell you like I see it. I'm asking you not to do that. But tell somebody when you see a problem. Anybody have any questions about these? Yes.
I think in many organizations, we do not have many uncomfortable conversations. Even though the problem exists, or let's say if you're concerned about patient safety issue. In many organizations, including the hospitals and many departments, I think we do not have uncomfortable conversations because of various reasons. It is very hard for people to get over some of the boundaries which are already established in a chronic system. And I think those things are plaguing the system and then affecting the patients. Let's say if you're a patient in the hospital.
Okay.
It's very difficult to get over that. Do you have any suggestions for not only me, but many others?
Okay. So, did everybody understand what you just said?
Yes.
Did you guys follow what you just said? The problem is the organization is resistant to the conversation. Who's got an idea how to address that?
Take people out for a beer.
Take people out for a beer? Lubrication always helps. No, it's true. Get them out of the office environment where the culture is different. Okay? What's another way to do it?
Find a more willing organization.
What's that?
Find a more willing organization.
You could move jobs. Find a more willing organization. It might not be the right organization to start with.
You may have the same problems there.
You may. You may and you may not. You don't know until you ask, right? So it's a legit option.
Sometimes you can change the chain of command of which you go. So in the same organization, there may be a certain culture up one chain of command, but you go up another chain of command, there might be a little bit different culture there. The resistance might be. You see, we have multiple bosses. You go up to one boss and his boss and her boss is one kind of resistance. But you change that chain of command, go up another series of bosses, and then it's a little bit different.
Yeah. And that route is a legit route. What do you got to be careful with when you do that? Go up the chain of command. What's that? Stepping on people's toes. I'll tell you to be careful of the people that lead with their ego. You know, have you ever seen a leader that leads with their ego? I mean, regrettably, they're around everywhere. But somebody that leads with their ego, they're going to be very, very offended if you do that. Okay? You want to try and find people who lead. So if you've got a leader that leads with their ego, I would be careful with that approach. Because if you step on their ego, you're like whacked. Yep. Not even on your show. You're going to take you right off. Right? They don't even see you as part of the solution. So I'd be careful. Here's another option. I'm going to give you one more. Have you heard of a car company called Toyota? Yes? Okay. Do you know that it was founded by somebody with the last name of Toyota? Yeah. It's spelled differently, but that's the Americanized version of the one we all know. So I'm going to tell you a story about what happened. Mr. Toyota used to walk through, nobody ever calls him by his first name, Revere. He would walk through the plant. So if you go back to the late 60s, early 70s, when they were trying to enter the market, when Clint and I were kids, there was no Toyota cars on the road. Very few of them. But they were trying to enter the market. Mr. Toyota used to go through the plants himself. Imagine, the CEO of Toyota would come in the morning and walk through your plant. And one day he walked through the plant, and one of the processes had stopped. And he knew that meant they weren't making the car. Because when you stop one part of the process, the whole assembly line stops. So he stopped and he said, well, what happened? And there was a machine that stamped one piece of metal in the car, and it was broken. And he just stood there for a second. And it occurred to him that in his own organization, he didn't know this. So he just did something that is now incredibly famous. He asked a three-letter word. You know what he did? He said, why? And so they said, well, it needs to be calibrated to make the part with the precision every time. And it's out of calibration. Okay, thank you for that. And then he went to the person that was calibrating it and he said, so why is it out? And he said, well, the tool that I need to do that needs to be running virtually 24 hours a day to stay in synchronization, to be a reliable measurement. Oh. After his fifth why, the answer to the problem was the cleaning staff on shift number 3 with a broom knocked the plug out of the wall on a seemingly innocuous piece of equipment. So he developed a process of whenever somebody had a problem, you have to ask the question why at least 5 times. So it's called the 5 whys. And if you ask 5 whys, you will almost always, when I do it, I sit there, I can't, like it's so simple, I can't believe how correct this man was. But if you Google Mr. Toyota, the 5 whys, it'll come right up. So, oh, there it is right there.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you know this.
Yeah, I do.
So since the question came up about having candid conversations and how do you do that, this is one resource that I think probably some people in the room are familiar with. This Crucial Conversations book came out probably 10 years ago now.
Yes.
And there's a series of them, including crucial confrontations. So it goes on like that. So it talks about how to have difficult discussions, but it gives you a framework on which to think of it. I'll be perfectly honest and say I don't practice everything in that book, not because I don't want to, but because it's not something I've assimilated. The other resource that I think is also very valuable for that, Google, if you're interested, Google 2 words, radical candor. And up will pop a YouTube, and it's done by someone who used to work at Google. And we talk about storytelling. She tells a very interesting story about why she came up with sort of a framework on which to develop an ability to have very candid conversations with people. And the basis of which came up here. You have to have a relationship in order to have to be brutally honest, right? So I can be brutally honest with Matt because we know each other, we have a relationship. I can't have that same conversation in the same way with somebody I like Colin because I don't know if we don't have that same level of relationship equity built up. But listen to her story and how she talks about how she went through that transformation for herself. Really good stuff. Okay. 2 resources.
So in your organization, I would start with why is it done this way? I will bet the answer, just guessing because I've done medical devices in my past, that the answer relies somewhere around legal responsibility and culpability and insurance billing and stuff like that. So I'll bet that there's some market forces that are exogenous to you that are causing people to keep their mouths shut. And just, this is the way we always did it. I'm safe if I do it this way, and I check around my job. But try the 5 whys. It's very safe. When somebody can tell you, I don't want to answer that question, okay, move on. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So for the exercise later, for those of us that aren't likely to run into prospective customers, assuming that Mars Bond isn't wandering the streets of Detroit today, do we just ask for general stories that have to do with the field that we're looking into?
Yes. Have you ever had experience, have you guys had experience with cancer or health issues? Have you had a challenging outcome? What was that like for you? Okay. Who did you talk to? Because if they start telling you who they talked to, it might tell you, well, I don't need to talk to the doctors, but every single oncologist has a nurse on staff that's that contact for patient interaction. So the doctor's impossible to get to, but we were just talking about the vascular problem. And one of the vascular surgeons at Med that I know, he has a nurse on staff. If you want to talk to him, you want to learn, I would talk to her before I would talk to him. Because she'll give you the time of day. She'll share what it's like to talk to patients. You follow the logic? So it'll help you elucidate or illuminate what the market of people you need to or can actually talk to.
So like gatekeepers?
Yes. Gatekeepers. Who is helpful to you? Who wasn't helpful? There might be somebody in the insurance company they say, you know what? If your oncologist tells you you're positive for X, the insurance CDPHP has a group of people you can call. Okay, I'm not writing this down during the conversation as soon as I finish. When I do customer interviews, I have a packet of Post-its in a pen in my pocket, and I'm writing it down as soon as they tell me. Not while I'm talking, but as soon as I walk away. Any other questions?
Yeah, since the conversation, like for example for today, what's that blur line between a conversation and an interview? And when do you really need to tell them, this is why I'm asking all these questions, this is what I want to know?
Great question. When is it a conversation, when is it an interview? So what I usually tell people up front is I'm working on an NSF, National Science Foundation funded program. And I'm out to have conversations to learn about a market space if they ask. I don't find it. I come right out and say it. So if they say, oh, is this, are you trying to sell me something? Not at all. Actually, I think I might be an entrepreneur, but I need to talk to people and listen and hear how their experience with this problem is, so I understand before I do anything. And almost always, I took the head of
the Center for Biotechnology and Interdisciplinary Studies at RPI, as one of my I-Corps cohorts. And he was the academic lead with one of his students who's now in India, was the entrepreneurial lead. And he said, so what are we going to do for scheduled customer interviews? I promise you if you ask him, he'll tell you the same thing. And I think he was ready to like panic when I told him what we were going to do. We were in Austin, Texas. And I said, okay, come with me. We got in the rental car, drove. And all I did is just put hospital into the GPS. And it turned out to be the biggest medical center in Austin, Texas, right? So we pull up, we find a parking spot, and he's like, oh, who are we going to talk to? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. You want to see the look. Both of their faces. We don't have any appointments? No, not at all. And I walked in, you know the candy stripers that are at the front desk there that are volunteers? And I walked in and I said, hey, I'm here, I'm teaching at UT Austin, a cohort, and these are participants in the program, and we're trying to make sense of how people handle, they were in back surgery, they had a device for that, technology for back surgery. And I said, they're not selling. They're researchers from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in our academy, but they just need to talk to people to find out how they solve the problem and how big of a problem it is. And she went, oh, that's kind of cool. She asked like 1 or 2 questions. She walked us up to the head of surgery. Knocked on the door, said, Dr. Bill, here's who these people are. Would you take 5 minutes with them? We spent the entire day and never left that medical center. So when you're trying to understand somebody else, they're very willing to talk to you. You're not selling, you're listening. Everybody goes, oh, it's so hard to get doctors and nurses. You don't always need the doctors and nurses. The patients are good enough, the insurance company is good enough to give you insight. Right? The farmer, the kids at the fair, the people in New York State that run the state fair, the people in Massachusetts that run the Big E where you milk the cows. They're good enough to give you insight into how to do this. I promise you in 4 weeks you can get 100 reviews. You really can. With that, there's this great, amazing new startup in the capital region called Self-Array. And I've asked the CEO to come in and speak to you today. I'd like to introduce you to the CEO of Self-Array, Mr. Clinton. Oh, Dr. Clinton.
Yeah, I think I'll do this real quick. Super. Okay. Hello, I'm Clint Ballinger, I'm the CEO of Self-Array. Let me tell you about my company. Self-Array, we use diamagnetic levitation, and we use pyrolytic graphite. Just go with it. Go with it. Damn it!
What do you guys want to say to him when he starts with that?
Exactly. Yeah. So we use this diamagnetic. We make a magnetic stage. We use diamagnetic levitation with graphite on the back of it. They have tiny LEDs that are 100, 120 microns in size, and we use them in. Who cares, right? Who gives a shit? But as like an inventor and a scientist, what's my gut reaction? This actually happened to me. I was over in Rochester, and I was in this food line at an entrepreneurial gathering. And I wasn't gonna pitch my company or anything. And just out of the blue, a guy next to me was like, "Hey man, what's your company do?" Well, we use diamagnetic levitation. Like, what the? He was like, I sat down, I was like, why the hell did I do that? I teach this shit. But I was like so engrossed in like the, the technology. Of course everybody's gonna want to know, I don't give a shit, Well, I should say, hi, I'm Clint Ballinger, CEO of Self-Array. You ever go to the Apple store? You ever go to the Apple store recently? You see that huge display? They have these huge displays in like every Apple store. It costs $1.5 million. It's 30 feet wide. But it's beautiful. Perfect for marketing, indoor marketing, things like that. You see them at airports, casinos, things like that. They're expensive. We can make those for 20% the price, ladies and gentlemen. That's more memorable, right? 20%, 80% savings. Who gives a crap about diamagnetic levitation of LEDs, you know? But make it cheaper. Solve a problem. That's the kind of point you got to get to. Because you're, you know, when you first start off, you're in love with the technology. Oh man, this stuff is so great. It's funny because it's taken me 53 years to give a good presentation at a potential partner. So last year at this time, we flew over to Belgium. We were talking to the company called Barco. Now, Barco makes probably every movie projector you've ever seen. So you go to the movies, Barco makes those projectors. Barco's also getting into this digital display where they're making displays out of LEDs. In fact, they want to make cinemas out of LEDs, big LED screen. Super cool. So, typical Clint Ballinger presentation is PowerPoint, talk about your company. My company does this. Here's what we do, and here's the problems that we solve. We make it faster, we can make it cheaper, like all these kind of things. Talking about all this and the speed, we can make this so much faster than you guys can currently make it. And I'm lecturing Barco on what their problems are and how we fix their problems. So literally on the plane, I'm looking at my slides, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good, that's pretty good. I'm like, what the hell am I, that's not pretty good, that's shit. I'm telling a world-renowned company, I'm guessing their problems, and I'm telling them a solution. And here I am, small company with the solution, Barco. PowerPoint does that to you. It lulls you into this sense of, I got to give a pitch. I'm giving this pitch. Look at the virtues of my company. So what it did is it turned it all around. And typically what they usually say, and I think I said this last night, if I had given that presentation, I can guarantee, oh, it's very interesting. It's really cool technology. I mean, we love it. It's great. You know what? Keep developing it. 6 months. Come back and talk to us again. This is great. I mean, I love it. Ooh, you guys are doing great. And you walk out of there thinking, it's pretty good. And then when I talk in 6 months, it's a blow off. Okay. On the plane, I changed my presentation, made it like 3 slides. Intro, and then it was like, I've built things before that nobody cared about. I'm the CEO of this startup. Guys, I don't want to build something that you won't use. I want to build something that you will use. I have some technology, I think it would be useful, but I don't even know what your problems are. So what are the problems, where are the trends, where are you going? They literally, like one guy almost started clapping. I have never heard a startup company say that. You usually come in and fix our problems, and then we usually tell you we'll talk to you in 6 months because it's really cool technology. I'm like, damn, that's usually what happens to me. So we ended up having a great conversation for like 3 hours, and it was all open-ended. I didn't even use PowerPoint. So just a little tip, especially for the highly scientific types and stuff like that.
Can I add my perspective?
You go right ahead.
He called me when he came out of the meeting. No, I called you.
Yeah.
To follow up. They offered to give him, he flew all the way to Europe for what was scheduled to be a 1-hour meeting. They gave him most of the day, but the executives gave him 3 hours. Think about the cost for an executive team of a large multi-billion-dollar company to give those executives 3 hours with Clint from Troy, New York. Right? Was there a cost there? Yes. So he called me. Can I give the contents of our phone conversation?
Go, man.
It was, I can't effing believe this. It works. You're not going to believe what happens to me. So what are you doing now? We're going to go have a beer right
Drink
now
it.
as much as we can.
Yep.
Okay? So I'm telling you from our personal experience,
yep.
Trust us. It's hard to learn this, but it works. Okay? Are you talking about you at all? Are you talking about you? Who are you talking about when you're talking to me? Now. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Even better follow-up to this now. Just I went to Amsterdam for a conference, met the guy, the CTO who was at the table. CTO from Barco had recently quit, and he's the CEO of another company doing something unrelated. He wanted to meet me in Amsterdam to give us $25,000 of an investment and to be on our, to help us with business development. You can clap. You can clap if you want to, ladies and gentlemen. That's the power of customer discovery, open-ended questions and things like that. It's just that easy. Yes?
Ask a question.
Yeah.
So what if we actually get into the step of talking about the proposed solution? And then, I mean, as someone who's proposing, I know it's not perfect. I know it has a lot of problems. So at what moment, so like how much I emphasize the part that works and
Okay.
you know,
To me, and Matt said it earlier, it's like dating. So you see somebody that's attractive at the bar. So try this. Hey, I'm single. You're sitting alone. You look attractive. I think we should date. You think that would work? You can talk about your attributes too. My attributes are I'm a college grad, I have a good job, I drive a nice car. Not going to work, right? Start with open-ended questions, things like that, make a new friend. Eventually, you'll get to be able to talk about your solution. That comes way late. Date 3, 4, 5, you know? You're talking, listening, taking it all in. So let me see, your problem is you need higher throughput in your manufacturing line than what you currently have. Yeah, that is the problem. Okay, that's cool, yeah. Even at that point, you might, not feel comfortable enough after hours of talking to really unveil what your problem is. Maybe they'll ask you, what kind of solution are you working on? Well, I don't know. I don't know if it really fits with what you guys have, but we use some magnets and we use those to direct where the LEDs go. If they start asking questions about it, then that's a cool way to go. If you start pushing it their way, I would never do that.
But they do ask, especially if they know you're an engineer, they often ask you to do a presentation for what you're doing, and then they ask you all kinds of problems.
That's a problem. Yeah. If they ask you to do a presentation about what you're doing,
And then there's tons of problems.
and then your customer discovery goes out the window at that point. So that makes it tough. You can do 2 meetings in one. I mean, you could have one meeting, a pre-meeting, say, listen guys, I'm really here. My one purpose is I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, but my bigger purpose is to find out what you're doing and how maybe I can help. So maybe I'll spend a little bit of time on my stuff at the end, but let's talk about what you guys are doing. You can do it that way, because you're right. Like if somebody calls you and says, hey, I want to hear about what you're doing. Great, take the invitation. I want to tell you what I'm doing. But first, can we talk about what you guys need? Because I don't know if what I'm developing is even going to be useful. So let's talk about your needs and things like that first. So maybe kill it that way. Alrighty. Yeah.
So I earlier asked Matt this question about people having problems articulating their problem. And I want to repeat that question again, which is pretty much sometimes when you let people speak in an open-ended manner, they don't perceive that they have a problem. Customer perception of their problem. So what do you do then? I mean,
maybe that's an indication that it's not their problem. Like she goes to talk to the dairy farmers and she's trying to get them to talk about mastitis. And nobody says it. And maybe it's like, well, that's not who you're talking about. So that could be an indication of it not being a problem.
The Steve doesn't know, customers don't know what they.
Yeah, I've heard that customers don't know and all that. You can Google like a lot of things about how that's just so ridiculous. Because customers are people paying you money, and they're not going to pay you money if they don't see it as a problem.
Yeah.
It's a solution.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say if they're not telling you, yeah, it's not a problem, it's a conversation. Not everybody's, right? Remember, we start with the total available market, then down to the served available market, and then to a target market. You might be talking to somebody that's up here in the total available market. So just thank them for their time and move on. You want to find the people that think it's a big enough problem that they're fixing it today. And that's not everybody. The other key thing is people don't like to be told that there's a problem that they don't have. So don't force it. So if they don't fit, it's just like dating. Thank you. Maybe we'll talk another time. You follow the logic? Yeah.
There's an approach too. I like to think of the analogy of MP3 players when they first came out. So remember there were CDs, DVDs, things like that. They stored a ton more information than like cassettes or my day, 8-track tapes, you know, yeah. So, you know, albums, cassettes, things like that, and finding a CD. Oh my God, CDs, the music quality was so good, they could store so many songs on CDs. MP3 players come along. If you go to people with a CD collection, hey man, tell me about the CD collection. Yeah, it's awesome, man. They store a lot of songs. Do they? Yeah, man. You ever want them to store more? Nope. Ever want like other digital storage? No, this is great. CDs are gonna be around forever. And they don't know about this displacement technology. You might think, what the hell? These guys they're dumb. They don't understand. Maybe it's your approach. You can approach them in a different way. You know, ask higher level questions. Man, what if you could store an entire library? All these CDs, there's like 15 pounds of CDs here. I don't know, wouldn't it be crazy if you could put all those into one little digital format? That'd be nuts. Yeah, that'd be useful. It would save 15 pounds. So there's different approaches if you just, you know, especially if you have a displacement technology or something like that. All right, what I'm thinking we'll do, let me fast forward here real quick, because we had a lot of stuff. But you guys are so mature, I'm going to skip to this, okay? And we're going to get you guys ready to go out and talk at the farmer's market. The point of this exercise is twofold. The first fold is to get you freaking talking to people. It's not the easiest thing in the world to talk to people. Matt's example of going to talk to a hospital, you walk into a hospital, man, like, geez, who do I talk to in this place? It's scary. You're going to go to a farmer's market. Come on. Farmer's market's easy. People selling stuff. Make some new friends. Twofold. Get you out talking to customers, talking to people, okay? Just talking to people. Getting into the practice of talking to strangers, because that's what you're going to need to do. If you're very lucky, you might actually find a potential customer or a user or an influencer or somebody in your value chain. You guys have some pretty complicated things. However, you know, it's the city of Troy, man. There's some pretty diverse people that show up at this farmer's market. Some are going to be easier, maybe some solar stuff down there, maybe some head things, you know, they might have some things. Farmer's market, of course, for you might be really good. Other people, like, hey man, I got this new sort of 3D scaffolding, petri dish thing. Yeah, it's a little too detailed. But I will say, we had a guy last cohort with a sort of a diaphragm actuated heart pump that would help people with this rare heart disease. He found a freaking heart surgeon at the farmer's market. Talked to him for 2 hours. Used him throughout the whole cohort. You may get lucky and find somebody, okay? I don't want you to get stuck. I want you to go down there and talk to strangers. That's the big important goal. And so I wanted to give you some tips, okay? Talking to strangers is always difficult, but it is really important. So you go down with NSF hat and t-shirt. You start introducing yourself. Hi. And wait for an open moment. Don't go to the cucumber stand and the guy's swamped with people. Hey, selling cucumbers here. They're going hot. Hey, it's crazy, crazy. And don't go, hey, I'm from the NSF and everyone. No, wait till they're just being casual and not selling anything, because they're there to sell, okay? So don't bug them when they're selling. Try to find somebody that's like restocking or something. You can talk to anybody. Friendship building. Do a little ass kissing, conversation. Follow up, deeper dive. Thanks, thank them, get some contact information. Those are sort of the steps. So here's a script. Hi, I'm part of an SF program, working on a project to get some expert insights into things. Your company is a leader, your cucumber stand here sells great cucumbers. Feel free, don't go and do nothing. Go and talk about cucumbers. How do you grow these? I don't want to sound idiotic, but you grow these things like in a farm. Here in the wintertime, you have a greenhouse. Like, how's it work? How do you do it? Just get them talking, open-ended. Don't be, how many cucumbers do you sell a day? 5. How long do they last on the shelf? 3 months. Not good questions. Not good questions, okay? So at a minimum, get down there and just start talking to people. Use your NSF. Again, use us. Man, I got these slave driving overlords that are demanding that I come down here and talk to people as part of the National Science Foundation. And you're an expert in this field. Can you help me out? Great. So how long you worked here? Do you come to the farmer's market every week? It sounds keen to come here every week. How do you know? Just, you're trying to make a new friend. That's what I always say about customer discovery. Your goal is to walk away, learning something about their problems, their needs, and making a friend. And being able to contact them later. Okay? That's the goal. A little ass kissing. You can ask them about their products, what sells the most, what do you like most about being a farmer, that kind of thing. If you do find a target customer, which you guys might find somebody, we're going to work after they've done the ladder, and we're going to work on your scripts for your target customers, okay? You guys, like I said, literally you see a pregnant lady, get excited, like, oh man. I would practice with the cucumber guy first, hey, cucumber dude, how's it going? And then go, okay, I got my confidence, I'm going to go talk to this lady. And, I don't know what your script is going to be, but that's right, man, I got 2 kids of my own. How's it going? What do you do? Oh, 3 months, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm working on this NSF project. Can I talk to you for a little bit? Like, I'm trying to get some information. I got an invention, but I don't know if it'll be useful for you. But like, are you, I hate to be invasive, but are you planning to breast pump? Or, breastfeed your child? Yeah, like, just start talking. If they say, no, I hate breastfeeding and I want nothing to do with it, probably just, well, I got this great idea. And you would like it. So just, use your judgment. Again, try to make some contacts, make friends, okay? Conversation, follow up, deeper dive, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, thank them at the end, get their contact information if they're going to be useful for you. If they're just simply selling cucumbers and stuff like that, they're not going to be very useful. If it's a person with solar cells in their farm, dairy farmers, etc., if you can start building up a little Rolodex of names you can contact later, that's going to be good. Never want to sell. People will run away from you if you sell. People will call security if you start selling. Don't do it. Had a couple of teams get kicked out of Lowe's because they were asking customers too many questions. Feel free to ask customers that are there as well. So it's not just the vendors. Vendors are there to sell. Again, don't bug them too much. But the customers that are roaming around also, they're going to be valuable people. Here's what I'm thinking. You guys write down some open-ended questions that you want to ask your target customer and describe who your target customer is. Do that in your group. Matt and I are going to go around and we're going to give you guys some coaching on maybe you rephrase that question this way and let's approach it this way, this kind of thing, okay? So do that right now and we will come around and ask you some questions about it. Okay, hey guys, listen up real quick, just some follow-up stuff. Listen up. Hey guys, we have, listen up just for a second, everybody. Okay, we're getting ready to go over to the farmer's market. It looks like you guys have sort of a script to go on. Matt and I are going to be there. Ask us any questions. Don't get stagnant. Don't just stop, go, and keep going, okay? If you got any questions, I'll be there. Matt will be there. Ask us some questions. We'll help you get unstuck. On Wednesday of next week, we have our first phone call. It's going to be a series of face-to-face meetings and phone calls midweeks, okay? So we'll schedule that. You have to have 10 customer interviews to have the phone call. We have to be strict. National Science Foundation, if you get into the national program, this is just a local program, and we're friendly. We give hugs. We love you. The national program, they're rough. Very rough.
10 completed, 10 lined up.
10 completed.
For that call.
10 completed.
And documented.
And documented, right. So take notes, get their name, all that kind of stuff. That's the minimum, So
the new ones or have the existing ones?
Yeah. So the following you have to have 15, so five new ones. Yeah. Get the names of these people. You guys take notes when you're going. Remember what your questions are.
Yeah, I got a question for you guys.
taking names. We're talking about healthcare, maybe. So there might be some people reimbursed. I may not be comfortable.
Could be.
with the actual name.
Yep, and that's totally fine. If they're uncomfortable giving you a name, if you're uncomfortable asking, then that's fine too. But just, 55-year-old woman, blah, 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 something like that, that's fine. Yes? So, guys, here's what I want you to do today. We're going to go down to the farmer's market. It's right over there at the Uncle Sam Atrium. I think that's what it's called, right next door. I want you to report back to me after you've talked to 3 people. So, easy lift. Go talk to 3 people, strangers, target market, whomever. Better if it's your target market. When you've talked to 3 people, come over and see me. You're free to roll. I might even buy you a tomato. Yeah. You can absolutely do more than 3. So feel free to knock yourself out. But just, I want you to report back in. I want to hear how things are going. Okay. So I'll be standing by. Just look for a bald-headed dude with a flannel jacket, flannel shirt. All right.
Might be many of them.
I know there will be. Any other questions?
Where can we find you?
I don't know yet. I'll be around. I don't think it's a huge place, so you'll see a middle-aged bald-headed dude pretty easily. So.
Can we have your phone number again, please?
Yeah, my phone number is 518-928-7958. Yes.